to add that's different than our cover memo?
I don't think so. I think it's more just getting that direction, on if there is interest, and then setting, the parameters with the interest.
How about Attorney Dittman?
I mean, I'm happy to answer questions on that. I think we've already kind of discussed some of the decision points on this one and some of the, the risks and benefits of the lodging tax specifically on that matter. With regard to the second issue, which is, the lot that's currently a park space would have to be rezoned. I think that absolutely has to be sent to the ballot measure, because any rezoning of parkland requires voter approval now pursuant to a former ballot measure. So if we're interested in that idea, it has to go to the ballot. So we can discuss that more in detail if we need to.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So what is it appropriate to take a straw poll in a workshop? I know we're not making any decisions, but I ask because if there is not widespread interest in taking up an increase in sales tax, then we can leave that off the discussion.
Yeah, I think so. So long as it's understood, we're just gathering whether there's interest in moving forward on this. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So I'll ask, is there any interest in moving forward with an increase in sales tax? Trustee Delman says yes. Trustee Edding? No.
No.
Okay. Trustee Elson? No. Trustee Williams?
No.
Okay. And Mayor Pro Tem?
No.
Okay. And I don't have an interest in that either, particularly the way that inflation is behaving these days. I don't want to make it tougher on folks. Okay. So let's increasing the marijuana tax does not take a ballot measure.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Mm-hmm.
So I think let's move in to use our time most effectively. I'd like to focus on the lodging tax and the potential Lions Creates issue. So are there any questions from trustees about what we've learned so far about the lodging tax issue?
And if I need to give a recap on the percentage versus flat fee discussion, I can do that again, if that helps.
Yeah, please do. And if you could maybe talk about why previous boards decided not to go with the percentage and what has or hasn't changed since then.
Yeah, of course. So we've talked about this a few times, but this is a reminder. For a long time, it was thought under Tabor that statutory towns did not have the ability to do lodging taxes. And that's just kind of some of the nuances of Tabor and some of the quirks of being a statutory municipality is that we're only given powers specifically of all powers, but specifically of taxing as well. They're specifically enumerated in state statute. If it's not in state statute specifically, then we can't do it. And so the town of Dillon initiated a lodging tax that was a flat fee, and hotels that did not want to pay that tax sued them for that and said, you're a statutory city. Under some of the quirks of Tabor, we don't think you can do this. We think this tax is invalid. And that went all the way up to the Colorado Supreme Court, several years ago. I think it's like 2018 or 2017, I think that case was. It went all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court, and Dillon won its case. And the Supreme Court said that Dillon did have the authority to lodge a lodging tax. However, some of the nuances in the decision, as well as the fact that Superior's lodging tax is a flat fee, has led some to believe that statutory municipalities can only charge flat fee lodging taxes. Since that time, and that's basically the reason why the Board of Trustees at that time decided for a flat fee, because the only one that was in existence really at the time, which had sustained legal challenges, was Dillon's, and it was a flat fee. So that was the only thing we had to go off at that point in time. Since then, many other municipalities have enacted lodging taxes. Most of them have been flat fees like Dillon's, but there's been certainly a few, including statutory cities, that have done it as percentage based. I think Netherlands example, SS Park is an example. There's a handful of others that are percentage based. Maybe Mead was one of the other ones, I think, that are percentage based lodging taxes. And at least so far, those have not been challenged by anyone. Now, that doesn't mean that this issue is settled. There's still quite a bit of gray area about whether or not, a municipality, a statutory municipality could charge a percentage based lodging tax or not. From a practical way of thinking about it, it would seem to be that if you have the power to charge a flat rate tax, why couldn't you also do a percentage based one? But unfortunately, Tabor, as you've learned by now, is a tricky, nuanced piece of legislation. And, depending on how a future court may interpret that, there may be some risk in going to the percentage rate. So that's kind of more or less the background. The risk isn't not necessarily whether or not we could win a lawsuit. I can't predict that. I think there's a good argument that we could if we are to get sued, but the fact that there's enough gray area there that if anyone were want to challenge this in the future when we pass a percentage, there's certainly enough gray area for us to be stuck in the courts for a long time. And so that's kind of the legal landscape of a percentage versus a flat based lodging tax.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I have a question. Wasn't there something in a ballot a couple of years ago that passed that Tabor was no longer going to be in existence, or that it was going to, or was that strictly related to property taxes? If I remember, I don't remember, I guess is my point.
So what I believe you're referring to is the debrucing measure that was passed several years ago, which only applied to certain things. It was very specific in how that was applied. And it would not incorporate lodging taxes.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
you may remember too, that's part of the reason why the sales tax issue was before us or as under consideration, because the debrucing measure did not specifically mention sales tax in addition to other kind of issues. So.
Trustee Dillman.
So I don't remember the exact numbers, but we have one of the lowest lodging taxes around, I believe. Is that correct?
I think it's a fair assessment. And we have a spreadsheet for that. I don't know if that's readily available. Do you have that, Cassie? Okay.
Yep, give me 1 second. I
Okay.
can bring it up if you'd like me to bring it up now.
That may be
Yeah,
useful.
it'd be great to refer to. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see
Wow,
that.
you're so quick.
Well, I had it readily available. So these are just a handful of the areas that are kind of around us.
Trustee Edding.
Yeah, it was just two points. I think what Trustee Farrell was referring to was the Gallagher, whatever the Gallagher thing is.
Oh,
got repealed 2 years ago.
Thank you.
That dealt with the property taxes. Right?
that's a statewide thing. So
Yeah.
that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Then I had a second question. Is anybody out there? Are any municipalities out there applying the lodging tax to short-term vacation rentals? And what is our thought on that?
I have not researched personally that issue, but
Yeah.
we could, before we finalize, we could certainly look into that.
The short-term rentals are to be paying the lodging tax, yes.
Oh,
Okay.
great.
Okay.
We're doing it. I totally forgot. Yeah.
We just have so few that with only 14 or whatever are registered. I mean, it's like $28, on a Friday and Saturday night. It doesn't come up very substantial.
Other questions? So I have one regarding ballot language, and this relates to the marijuana tax as well. So my understanding is that we can put a measure on the ballot that says, for example, if we decide to go percentage based, that the board is authorized to charge up to X percent, and then the board itself sets that percent. which could be lower.
Yeah, that's correct. That's kind of the way the marijuana tax is set up currently.
Okay. Has everybody absorbed the information on the screen? Yeah, I think so. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Other considerations, and I'm curious about the risk benefits of the flat rate versus the percentage. And I will say that percentage is simply easier because when it comes to camping, there are campsites that sell for $35 a night, and now there are campsites that are going to be selling for $200 a night. We talk about glamping. So it seems a percentage would be more equitable across the board, but I'm curious about others' thoughts. Mayor Pro Tem?
Can we get an example of glamping that's taking place in town?
There is currently a glamping short-term rental in town, and I do believe that Riverbend is going to be wanting to discuss having glamping on their property.
Correct. They're working with staff on a submittal.
Okay.
The short-term rental is not a legal situation because we do not allow short-term rentals in tents. So it'd be whether or not Riverbend adds 20 plus glamping sites.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Trustee Edding?
Yeah, I was just gonna just respond to a comment you made. Yeah, I think the enormous advantage of percentage is that it's progressive. It just doesn't seem right that a $35 night is $2 and a $200 night is $2 as well. That it should be a progressive tax, and that's what percentage does. So it seems really, really clear to me we should go with the percentage. I guess the question would be is, can we look at what we receive overall in lodging taxes and then contrast that with if we started at 3%, would that be a tax increase or would that be a tax decrease depending on, I guess, is it possible to dive into those numbers?
That's another slide in that presentation if the mayor's okay with slide sharing.
Yeah, please.
Okay, one moment. Let's see. Oh, sorry. First of all, we get currently with our $2 rate, we get 16,300. That's our 2021 numbers. If we were to add the Lions Hotel into that at the current rate, they would add an additional $39,000. So that's if we kept it at $2. And this comparison, and you have to kind of consider, of course, the nightly rate. So here is what we are currently doing at a nightly, if you have a nightly rate of $180, it's really not going to make a difference because you either pay $2, $3, or $4.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, if it's a percent, $2 on 100 versus $3.60 on $180 room. And you can see it kind of, the difference is shown right here.
Does that answer your question, Trustee Edding?
Yeah, so that's for $180. But what about a campsite that's like $25? I'm just going through my head calculating what is 3% of the $25. I mean, I don't know what, because the big thing is going to be Planet Bluegrass, right? Isn't that going to be the largest contributor until the hotel's built as far as what we get for lodging tax? Is that true or not?
I don't know what we get, honestly, from Planet Bluegrass from lodging tax. I feel like I don't know if it's is it a fixed amount, Victoria? I'd have to look at the contract.
It is actually with the revenue we generate from Laverne Johnson, if it were to be painted in that same way would be more. But Riverbend is currently our largest significant rate like these numbers. But yes, Planet Bluegrass would be the major camping revenue.
Okay,
And then
great.
on,
So I guess in my head, I'm just doing a calculation, a $35 night, $2 flat, of course, is $2, but at 3%, you're talking roughly $1, right?
correct,
Yeah.
$1.05.
So there would be a drop in revenue on the camping side.
If we were to set it at 3%.
If we were to set it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Director Eystone. Trustee Williams?
I wonder if we thought about the fact that Colorado, as my understanding, does not have a lodging tax as a state and is one of about 20 maybe that don't. And you have states like Hawaii that are at 10% and Connecticut that's at what, 13% or something like that. Would that, I definitely am in favor of it. I'm definitely in favor of percentage. I probably am more interested in the higher percentage, not bolder, but something in the neighborhood of 5%, just given the fact that I don't think we have a state lodging tax at all. And so when you compare that, when I looked it up, there were I think that territories or states, there were only about 20 that did not have a state lodging tax. Most of them were lower. Most of them weren't double digit, but a couple of states were.
I didn't know that. Trustee Edding?
Just one other quick question. Is it possible to write the tax so that there's a minimum tax amount of $2 and then a percentage after that? Is that possible?
Attorney Dittman?
Charles, can you repeat the question?
The question is it possible to write taxation such that there's a minimum of $2 and then if it's greater than, and then a percentage after $2, or is that just silly?
I mean, you could. I don't know about administratively how that, whether
Okay.
it's easy not to administer or not.
Right.
We certainly could. And I just want to make a correction. I said Dylan was the one that was in the case. It's actually Eagle. I misstated. Correct the record on that. It's Eagle versus Sheep. If anyone wants to look it up.
Yeah, I think Trustee Edding, the ballot language on something like that could be pretty confusing.
Yeah, it's probably silly. Okay. Yeah.
No silly ideas. Mayor Pro Tem?
I think at one point we kind of floated the idea of like a municipal impact fee versus a tax. Can we get an explanation of what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, Brandon. I had a brief conversation with Zach at Planet Bluegrass because I wanted them to know that this is on the table. I don't like having surprises for folks like that. So their impact fee that they pay in Telluride is a per person fee, and what they get as a result of that is they get the use of the parks, they get the police, the security that they need, and they get the whole laundry list of things for that fee. So, I think if we were to discuss some kind of impact fee with Planet Bluegrass, it would have to be along the lines of something like that. But I know Attorney Dittman, you have something to add.
Yeah, I was going to speak more generally as to a fee versus tax distinction.
Right.
Taxes are a general revenue collection. It can go to the general fund and be spent on anything. A fee specifically has to be related to whatever it is you're collecting it for. And so if we're going to do a hotel fee, for example, it'd have to go directly to the sanitation, for the hotels or some sort of impact caused by hotels. And so that's, the classic case is the Aspen bag fee case where Aspen, put a fee on all plastic bags. And that survived legal challenge so long as they proved that it was going towards things to remediate, the effects of plastic bags or recycling, funding, that sort of thing. There must be some sort of nexus between whatever it is you're putting the fee on and what you're using the money for.
Thank you. Director Mitchell, you have something to add?
Hi. Yeah, thanks. My question is on the impact fee in Telluride. If Telluride allows camping in their town parks normally, because in Lyons, we we do. So our park allows for camping and we get a lot of parking revenue, but then we have to close it to the public. Whereas I'm not sure, honestly, in Telluride, if they do allow any camping the other 360 days when the Bluegrass Festival isn't there. That'd just be my question about the impact fee.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Other questions, comments? All right. Well,
I'm sorry, I do have
yes.
one more. So I want to clarify that we're talking about a lodging tax that incorporates hotels, short-term rentals, camping, and potentially glamping. So we're encompassing all four together. We're not going to be separating anything or excluding one or another from a potential new percentage lodging tax.
Well, that's the discussion I think that we're going to have during the item during our board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So let's move on to the marijuana tax. Now, the marijuana tax increasing it doesn't take a ballot measure. So we would just want to know if the board has an interest in adding that as a general business item at a future meeting. So Director Eystone, can you give us a brief overview of what the marijuana tax is at now and maybe talk about what the potential is?
Unfortunately, I can't give you dollar amounts because we only have two businesses in town, but I can tell you that we have a 3.5% rate that is paid directly to the town. So it's not collected by the state in this case. And then we have the potential to go up to 10%.
Okay, thank you. And Administrator Simonson, can you let us know if you recall why it was set at 3.5% originally?
I'm trying to recall that, but I think it was mostly, it was what most of the neighbors were doing at the time. You know, we were trying to keep in line with that. We weren't really sure how much the administrative burden was going to be, you know, locally and some of that. So if I recall, it was pretty much just based on our neighbors.
Okay, and are our neighbors still around that same percentage? I know Boulder is higher, but what about Estes Park?
Estes does not have marijuana sales.
Oh, captive audience we have there. Hey, Trustee
And I
Edding, did you have a
believe, Director Eystone has the list in front of her, I would guess, and maybe she can give it to you or show it again.
Oh, that's great.
Sure. So I have the town of Lyons, we have 3.5 sales tax and 3.5 marijuana tax. Boulder has 3.86 sales tax and 3.5% marijuana tax. And Longmont has 3.5% sales tax and 3% marijuana tax.
That's great context. Thank you. Trustee Edding?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a state tax on marijuana as well? I mean, what is their overall tax burden, and what percentage are we of their overall tax burden?
That's a great question. So state sales tax would be 2.9%. So they'll still have to pay that. There's a special marijuana tax that gets paid to the state as well. And Lyons actually gets a good portion of that back. So that's paid, but I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. I'd have to research a little bit, but I will say we do get a good portion of it back.
And one more question, if I could. How does it compare to the tobacco tax? Is it higher or lower than the tobacco tax?
I don't know. I would have to look.
I need to research that.
Yeah.
So I know that you can't give us specific numbers, Director Eystone, but can you tell us generally over the past couple of years how much we've received in marijuana tax?
I don't think I can,
Okay.
again, because it is very limited information. because right now we only have two businesses, and at one time we only had one. So unfortunately, I can't do that.
Okay, but once we have three, we'll be able to get more information. Okay,
Correct.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I was just kind of curious if there was any, I mean, so the closest neighbors we have are Longmont and Boulder, if that's correct. So I'm kind of wondering, and I don't know how many businesses they have, Longmont, for example, if we had a general idea on average, perhaps what Longmont's businesses are generating in sales tax?
We could certainly find that out. We have to remember they've only been allowing marijuana sales, what, maybe 2 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe 3 with COVID. It's hard. Boulder, of course, has dozens, if not maybe even 100 types of stores. So, and then the other communities, if they allow production, they're getting like a 10% excise tax on that as well. So it's a big business for Boulder for sure. Longmont, I'll look while we're seeing if there's anything on their website while we're meeting. I don't know that. We're making a list of your questions though.
Okay. Trustee Edding.
Yeah, just a quick question. Can we also see what the taxes is for the facilities out in the county as well? The ones really close to Lyons, but in the county.
Mm-hmm. We know, yeah, those are both Boulder.
Yeah.
County. So we have City of Boulder, County of Boulder, and Longmont.
And keep in mind that if we want to increase the marijuana tax, we can do that at any time. So it doesn't, to me, have the same sense of urgency as the ballot measures. Okay, so we have about 8 minutes left before we hear from our friends from DOLA. So I do want to talk about the Lions Creates situation. And Attorney Dittman, can you describe what a ballot measure in this matter might say?
Sorry, I was on mute again. So essentially what we would propose would be to have a ballot measure to 1, subdivide, and 2, rezone, I believe, the western quarter of the Sandstone Park. And that would include the visitor center. And the reason we have to do this is because there's a ballot measure that was passed a couple of years ago that says if you rezone any park property, that needs to go to the voters. And so the proposal would be to rezone, after subdividing it, rezoning that portion to municipal facilities, the M zoning classification. Paired up with this, that it would go through our own processes and not through a ballot measure, would be a change the municipal zoning classification to allow for office space, if you will, to nonprofit corporations as a conditional use. That would allow the town to rent out essentially the visitor center, a portion of it at least, to Lions Create. It'll allow the town to use other town facilities, to nonprofits that the city council, the board of trustees felt qualified as a conditional use. It wouldn't allow anybody to come in, but would give us discretion to use it when we felt was appropriate. And so that's kind of the idea behind, what has come forward is a really creative idea with Lions Creates, and just trying to find a way to accommodate them. And then other nonprofits have come forward over the years looking to rent town space. And so this would be kind of holistically kind of fix that problem, both specifically for Lions Creates, but also for other future nonprofits that run into the same issue.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Curious, let's say we go through the process and it all passes, and Lions Creates becomes amazingly successful and they want to expand upon the building. Do we have any issues at that point?
Well, we would still be the lease. We would still own the building, right? So
Sure.
Us as a leaser of the space would have ultimate say over what sort of modifications would happen to the building.
Mm-hmm. But would anything trigger another ballot measure?
It wouldn't require another ballot measure, but certainly there'd be other internal town processes that would have to be followed to
Mhm.
accomplish that modification. You know,
Mhm.
obviously the lease would have to be modified, but I think it probably gonna need a site plan,
Mhm.
some and some development review process as well.
And then the way you described this, it sounds like the language has to be two separate ballot questions, a subdivide and a rezone.
I would do it as one question. I think I proposed that we would like to subdivide and rezone. You know, technically only the rezoning piece of this needs to go through the ballot, through the voters. However, I think it's confusing otherwise. It makes it sound like we're rezoning all of Sandstone Park. And so I think it makes the most sense from a understandability perspective to do it as one question. Shall, the western quarter of Sandstone Park be subdivided and rezoned to municipal facilities zoning district?
Thank you.
And would we also include language after that for the purposes of et cetera, because what I would be concerned about is people thinking that we would want to rezone it to, for example, build a new town hall in the park.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do it generally saying for the purposes of, being able to use it for municipal facilities purposes or something like that. We couldn't say for the purposes of renting it to Lions Creates. We couldn't.
No, yeah.
If we wanted
Okay.
to generally know what our intentions are. We could do that.
Sorry about that. Other questions?
But would we want to also avoid getting overly specific so that if in 20 years that ended up being the only place we could build a town hall, for example?
This is exactly why I think I said it for something general for municipal purposes.
Okay.
We have to be careful not to limit ourselves, and we could then in the future have the argument, just like you say. We said, well, you said you'd want it, for the purpose of renting it to particular people. When we may have different needs in the future. So I wholly agree that it would have to be pretty general.
Thank you.
And then before we put out the ballot measure, you're all going to get to learn about the Fair Campaign Practices Act here really soon. We put out some material saying this is why we're doing this. I guess once we put that to the ballot, then we can no longer, be advocates. We can only say truthful, factual things. And so we would have probably put something up on the website, make a resolution saying this is why we're doing this prior to approving the ballot measure. That way we could educate people on why we're doing this.
Other questions or comments? Trustee Edding?
Are we incurring a cost for these ballot measures in this election? And what is that cost?
I think it's usually about 3,000.
I think it's gone up. It's
Gone up.
closer to 5,000 now, right,
It's
Dolores?
closer to 5, and the last time we coordinated with them, we got a little bit of a break because the state was piggybacking some questions on the Boulder County ballot, but I don't see that happening this time. So yeah, it's closer to 5.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but if we pass a good lodging tax, that we're going to get excellent return on that investment. Okay. Anything else before we move on to our friends at DOLA? All right, I love this. I love being on time. Welcome, Tracy. Welcome, Larry.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Well, thank
Thanks
you
for
for having
joining
us, Friends and Lions. So glad to be here tonight. Unfortunately, our fearless leader, Gail, is not feeling so well. And so Larry and I might stumble a little bit here and there as we kind of pass the torch between slides that we thought Gail might carry, but thank you for having us. So I'm Tracy Stoffel. I'm the Main Street Specialist here at DOLA. I've been here for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was with the Colorado Municipal League for 13 years and with our statewide historic preservation nonprofit, Colorado Preservation Inc. for 5 years. So have been around Main Street for a while. I'm really glad to be working directly with our communities. As I mentioned, Gail Langley, I'm sure many of you know her, is our Main Street coordinator, isn't feeling so well, but she's been with Dole, I believe, for about 5 years now. Prior to which she actually ran a local program up in Granby. So we're really fortunate to have somebody who knows what's going on in our local Main Street communities. Larry.
Hey, we have a really great team. I'm sorry Gail couldn't be here too. The Tracy's our muscle on the team, and it says specialist because that's what she is. She pretty much takes care of all of us. I'm Larry Lucas. I'm a licensed architect in Colorado, and I've been the Main Street architect for the last almost going on 5 years. Before that, I was in Oklahoma as the Main Street architect there for almost 7 years. So I've kind of got it in my blood. It might be because I grew up in a small town. I'm not really sure what happened, but I really love the work, love working with local property owners and folks like you. So we're just here to kind of tell you a little bit more about what maybe some more steps could be so you guys could advance, and a little bit more about the program.
Larry, with your vast history with Main Street, you want to take this slide as well?
Sure. So the National Main Street Movement was really something that fell out of the National Trust for Historic Preservation back in 1980 as a pilot program. People had seen the decline in their historic downtowns all across the country due to a lot of things with highway development that bypassed communities, urbanization, suburbanization of communities, people building outside of the core to build newer, better places after World War II. So in 1980, this all kicked off, and there were only a few states at the beginning, but now there's over 40 states that actually are in the program. I think 45 maybe even, that have statewide Main Street programs or a component program. And this says 1,400 communities nationwide, but I think that must be there has to be more than that. Frankly, I think there's probably been, I would say, close to 10,000 served since the program began. Sometimes folks get in the program, they get everything worked out, and they might decide to move on, but that's not usually the case. In Colorado, we have 22 official communities. We have, a large network of affiliate communities. What is it, almost 70 now, Tracy?
Yeah, I think with our official communities, we're at 86. So
wow, yeah. So those are folks that are interested in the program but haven't made the leap like you guys have. And we are housed in the Department of Local Affairs in the Community Development Office, which is part of the Division of Local Government. So we're really glad that we can work directly with you tonight.
And as Larry mentioned, Main Street was founded by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So it's really grounded in preservation and kind of that historic downtown core and that design element. But there are 3 other points to the 4-point Main Street approach, as they call it. That's organization, that's getting the right people in the room, making sure that it's community led, that what's happening in your town reflects what your town wants. Promotion, getting people into your downtown, and economic vitality. I always kind of laugh because I'm like, that's kind of the point, right? Is making sure that your businesses are vital and it's a place to be, but it's also about providing that support to your businesses and bringing in new business. Just a little bit about what it means for the Main Street program to reside at DOLA in Colorado is we're really fortunate in being able to provide benefits to our official communities. Everything from mini grants at $2,500 per year to kind of do those tangible investments into your community, to scholarships so that we ensure that our professionals in each community get the training that they need to really help their residents out. Consulting services, and we'll get into some of the details here. That's where we kind of manage the whole RFP, from the RFP to the resolution of the contract, working with our communities on projects within the community. As Larry mentioned, we've got a mighty team of 3 providing technical assistance, training, and resources to our communities. And then there's also that national network. And here's just a little bit more about the consulting projects that we do. These kind of range from everything on the 4 points, right? From the organization, vision, mission, strategic plan for our local programs to board of directors training. And some of these are just, kind of those general things that we provide statewide, but then we can get into specific things where we can really help out our communities. A popular one is parking assessments. Another thing that we do is we can actually even do park design. Not going to go through all of these, but basically what we always try to encourage our Main Street programs to remember is that much like on the broader scale with the town in general, DOLA is here to help. So when you have a need, let us know. If we can't fill it, we try to put you into touch with somebody who can.
That's right. And we have projects that are really ranging all over the place. We could be working on historic properties. We could be working on a downtown wayfinding project, and then we could be working on a dog park, which is something I just picked up the ball on in a little town called Hugo out on the Eastern Plains. So, we can pretty much take care of whatever you need. That's the beauty of the program, is it's custom. And our services typically range just on an average, this is low, but on 15 to 18,000 per year per community on our consulting services. So we really want you guys to take advantage of those. Sometimes they're much bigger contracts, 30,000 and above. And drawings could be done, say for streetscape. We could actually help get you up to construction documents. It might take a few phases to get there, or a few years, and then maybe you guys working with us, but we can get to that level of complexity with the projects too. Generally, my work is in historic preservation. You guys have some wonderful historic buildings downtown. You also have a lot of really interesting adaptive reuse of like those residences and things like that. And also the district is very linear in Lyons, which is kind of a neat attribute that you guys have. So, playing that up like you're doing is very positive. I can give design advice, like that, but also on a deeper level, talking about placemaking, public design, running some sort of a design charrette, design training, and then working directly with property owners, which is really my favorite thing to do. I haven't been to Lyons and met with property owners in a couple of years, so it might be good to set up a meeting and let's just kind of walk the downtown and see who has needs, and maybe they have a leaky wall or they need a new awning and aren't sure what color, and just really any general questions or very particular things like how do we get funding to rehab our building? Those are the things that I deal with on a regular basis, and we're glad to help, like Tracy said.
And we're glad to have Larry on our team here. He was mentioning how many states have statewide programs, but very few of them actually have a full-time architect on staff. And so we really want to make sure that we leverage that and make sure that our building and business owners take advantage of this pretty unique opportunity. And just as some examples of the things that we have done for Lyons in the past few years, we do have, as I mentioned, the mini grant and scholarship. Actually, pre-pandemic, DOLA set up the mini grants and scholarships to be 5-year awards rather than annual, which has provided some great flexibility. That means that $2,500 per year that Lyons gets as it's called a candidate community or an official community, but kind of on the entry part of our services. That $2,500 a year means you have $7,500 total to use by June 30th, 2025. I don't believe you've tapped into any of that yet. But instead of having to come up with, what am I going to do with $2,500 this year? You can come up with a kind of a bigger project and tap into multiple years for a single project. Again, that tends to be those tangible items, whether it's a piece of artwork or benches, the long-term investment into the community. Rather than those kind of shorter term things like I'll always say is we'll pay for the flower pots, but not the flowers. And again, the scholarships that provided a lot of great flexibility with COVID as well, right? With a lot of training, for the first couple of years of this 5-year award being virtual rather than losing it at the end of the year, which would have happened previously, that's still kind of sitting in a pot and kind of will help round out some of the costs to attend our 2 required trainings. Each year, a manager has to attend our annual summit. And each spring, we do require somebody to attend the National Now conference. Kim Mitchell is the representative from Lyons this year. And next year, that's going to be in Boston. And so when you break that up into $2,200 a year, $2,200 doesn't go very far to get into Boston, but we want to make sure that, we can get people to those trainings that we require of them. And then here we have some examples of what we've done in the past with your mini grant funding. Wayfinding signs, a small piece. I know how expensive those can be, as well as some consulting services that we discussed with Kim and Brianna. And you were just talking about the potential of, converting that west end of the park. That's something that we can help, do some public engagement in terms of visioning, for the creative district, or what, 4th Ave might look like. That's the kind of consulting services that we can tap into. And again, some past consulting services that we've offered. VMSW is Vision, Mission, Strategic, and Work Plan, as well as a market opportunity assessment. I actually had the opportunity to go up and attend those meetings for that in early 2020, way early 2020, just before everything kind of shut down. Pickaxe, that's our branding project. So that logo, that the Lions Vibe logo, we had a part of that, and kind of the whole idea of messaging the program, as well as facilitation of a board retreat. And Larry, I'll let you chat about your.
Sure. And Tracy mentioned the mini grants, but it's often you can use that money to leverage other grants. There was a CDOT grant that's just been really popular, and I think there's still money potentially funding that. Tracy, do you know if the public
it is continuing to be funded? It's the CDOT Revitalizing Main Streets grants, and I believe that you leveraged that, or that you've tapped into that grant, but they do have continual ones, and you can apply multiple times for it.
And you can do wonderful things, especially around accessibility, wayfinding, things like that, anything that improves walkability. Also, you could leverage the grant money for like a electric vehicle charging station. There are probably a lot of other examples. So if you see an opportunity, but you don't really have the budget for something, then consider, taking $7,500 and what can you do with that? As far as the things I've been working on, like I said, I really need to make a visit. So we need to get that set up. I'm only a hop, skip, and a jump down the road here in Lakewood. But also I think I need to do some training, and I think it would be an important time to probably do kind of a scratch 101 design training, which can take about 2 hours to go through some slides and actually do maybe some workshop type things together. And so let's try to plan that this year. And I'll talk with Kim and we'll see what we can do.
And so one of the things that we've been doing on a statewide basis each May, kind of tying into that Historic Preservation Month and the basis of the Main Street program, is called Celebrating Main Street. And it's just kind of a survey that we've been sponsoring in each of our Main Street communities to find out what people love about their downtowns. And that goes from favorite businesses like St. Vrain Market to favorite spaces and favorite pieces of art. We also have done a word cloud from the results, and just have had some great response in Lions. I know that I believe it was last year, Brianna was really posting a lot of historic photos and generating a lot of excitement on social media about people's memories of what was happening in Lions in the past and what is there now. But with this, we've developed story maps for each of our communities as well. So you can go to the DOLA website, and if you're interested in Main Street, you can see a map of all of our Main Street communities, and then zoom into Lions, and then zoom into favorite building and businesses there. And we will be further developing that with the results from this year's survey. And some of the recent successes, Larry talked about leveraging funds. I don't think any of these you've matched our mini grant with, but you've had some great success in getting just different technical assistance and grants into your community from Restart Destinations with the Colorado Tourism Office, working with the Regional Resiliency Program with DOLA, with your neighbors in Clear Creek, Gilpin, Grand counties, as well as Estes Park and Netherland, that regional road mapping coming out of COVID. Hopefully coming out of COVID. And it does mention here, and I did think that I'd seen that you had received $393,000 for your Broadway improvement, implementing your Broadway improvement plan, as well as some Dr. Cog funding for infrastructure totaling more than 2.5 million. And I think you guys are just such a natural fit for the creative districts. I know that they have that lodging component, and with your added hotels, I think that it's just gonna make so much sense for you to be a creative Main Street, as we call them. We do have a couple of different communities who do both and do it in different ways. And we've certainly had conversations with Kim and Brianna about that. But you guys have long been just kind of an artsy and cool vibe community, and really excited to see you move in that direction. Now here's just some information that Gail worked with some graduate students at the University of Colorado, Denver, the Masters in Urban and Regional Planning program, to look into the return on investment in Main Street. And here you can kind of see just some really interesting numbers in terms of leveraging for every dollar spent by a Main Street program, what that ends up leveraging in the community, everything from volunteer hours to tourist dollars to jobs created. They, did the primary to, the secondary jobs and everything. And money's leveraged. But you can see where even in a down year like 2021, invested in Main Street returns nearly $12 in other investment. I'm afraid that is about as in depth as I'm going to be able to go into that. If you have questions about it, I'm sure Gail would love to. She's definitely a numbers person and loves this stuff and definitely believes in the investment in the program and would be able to explain this into greater detail with you.
And I think this is basically money that the city contributes to the program, right, or to the downtown redevelopment. Is that
yeah? It's the $1 that the town or puts into the program and how it turns back. So you can see, and the tourism, which we realize is kind of a squishy number. We really did try to make that be reflective of like the events sponsored by Main Street programs and not just everybody who's traveling through lines and stops on the way to Estes Park, right? To really kind of make it a real number instead of a, hey, look how good we are number. But we do realize that for example, the tourism dollars can be a little bit squishy, but the volunteer hours, that's part of the quarterly tracking that we require from all of our Main Street communities. And that's the number recommended. I can't remember if it's the National Nonprofit Association, but multiplying out the number of volunteer hours by the recommended dollar amount, and you can see it's pretty significant. And that's very much directly tied to the Main Street program. And then we just wanted to take a moment. You guys are doing, and we've talked about some of the wonderful things that you've done in Lines, but we also wanted to share with you. We find that people really learn from others. And I think that's kind of why, one of the main reasons that we encourage people to get training across the state. We just wanted to share with you a quick story out of Leadville and what they're doing with some of their money as well, maybe to inspire some ideas that you have for your own town. As we mentioned, there's the planter boxes that they use their Main Street mini grant funds for, and then they use volunteer hours. It takes an awful lot of work in our dry climate to keep those flowers looking pretty in downtowns. And so that's a great resource for volunteers right there. Larry mentioned the EV station and leveraging our mini grant funds with typically charge ahead funding for an EV station. And then Zates Park over here on the right. And once again, Larry mentioned kind of that phasing of projects. Our mini grants and consulting funds helped phase this entire project in for Leadville. So, for example, you might use Larry for a conceptual idea, then you might use a consultant for signed, stamped drawings for the implementation, and then you can use the mini grants to leverage different aspects of it. Maybe it's first the mural, then it's the purchase of the benches, and then it's the in Leadville, they converted an old mining cart into a fire pit. And so, where you have those different steps and really use the program to make a big impact, even if it might be over a little bit of time.
Okay, for a preservation example, this is really a remarkable thing that happened through some funding that we had through the Main Street Open for Business program that we just wrapped up. There was a property owner. He is the Herald Democrat newspaper property. It was the center of this building. It's been there since 1924 as the newspaper. The owner of the property actually didn't really know anything about preservation, didn't know about preservation funding, and didn't really know how to access funding. So we came to him and said, if we could provide a little incentive money, would you be willing to match that, per the grant's requirements, and take your building from this, mint green, which the entire facade, all the decoration, everything was painted that color, back to its original stature. And what was cool about this, and you guys probably have the same opportunities, is there was an architect locally. There were contractors that were working in the area already that had expertise in preservation work like masonry, historic color analysis, different things like that it took to bring this building back. And then the town was on board with the grant, to actually assist this property owner, which was a rare occasion that we actually through DOLA could work through a town and sub-grant to an individual. But this is how the project worked. And it's amazing that the building actually is like it would have originally looked. They took every brick on the facade and they couldn't remove the paint because it would chemically damage the brick to remove the paint. So they literally reversed every brick. They disassembled it. That's what they're doing on the left. And then they reassembled it after they cleaned the brick and flipped it 180 degrees. And so that's what the building would have looked like in 1895 when it was built. And it's pretty cool to actually see those things come to life. And you all have potential for that too with some of your older buildings.
And yeah, and I think Larry just kind of briefly mentioned, this was done with Main Street Open for Business funds that just wrapped up on June 30th and the reporting on July 30th. So a big lift over the past year. It was done with state stimulus funds as kind of a one-time thing to help our business and building owners who suffered throughout the pandemic, with the idea that with the improved facade, you improve foot traffic, right? People look at, the place on the left and go, it's, kind of run down. Maybe if you're walking, you see something interesting in the window, you might stop in. But when you look at the one on the right, you're like going, wow, this looks attractive. This is a place that I want to go into. And part of our metrics are saying, no, we anticipate that each of our participants in this program will see at least a 15% increase in year-over-year sales because of this. And another component was energy efficiency. So in part to help reduce the costs for the owner, but also as part of the implementation of Governor Polis's plan to reduce our carbon footprint by 2040. Again, it was stimulus funding. We do hope we will get this kind of funding again in the future with a little bit longer time frame to implement, because it was quite the process to get that money spent and all these projects completed in one short year. But I'm so proud of the 16 communities that received the funding because they did it. And then we just wanted to throw up on the screen here real quick for you a little bit more about Lions and go into detail since we've got the time here. I think we have until 6:45. Is that correct? Okay, I see nods. Excellent. So what your current transformational strategies and work plan are for Lions Main Street, and what transformational strategies, I think it's just kind of an awkward phrase, but what it is really that community vision for the downtown, right? It's not like Lions doesn't need to be transformed. Lions is awesome. It's just kind of really what's that vision and taking it to the next level. And those are recruiting businesses to the Lions Commercial District. As we mentioned, we did that market assessment with y'all a couple of years ago to really kind of hone in on what you have, what you need, and where your leakage is to other communities. Promoting the unique character of local businesses in the Lions Commercial District. I know this is something that Brianna works diligently on. It's kind of what that Celebrate Main Street campaign was all about. We started it in 2021 as kind of a physically distanced way to encourage people to get into downtown rather than those big crowds and big events. And then just continued into 2022 because people enjoyed it and we had such a good response to it. But really kind of the idea of getting people into the downtown, thinking about the unique character of their downtown and of their businesses. It's just one of the ways that we've supported in the past. And then building a framework for a sustainable Lions Main Street program. I think it's fabulous that the town is housed in the town, and that's a great funding structure, and that works for y'all. But also just kind of helping you again with kind of that organizational aspect and making sure that you can that it continues to be successful in the future. We made some notes here down in the box below in our discussions with your program about how we might be able to help further in the future. We mentioned the idea of doing some public engagement in terms of that pedestrian activation along that west end of town, helping with the business attraction and for essential services. So aside from just kind of where you're at, taking that next step and helping you identify and bring in businesses, helping become a creative district. As I mentioned, we're super excited about that you guys are pursuing that and have seen it in other communities, and would love to share with you our thoughts and ways to move forward on that. And then again, something that we just always encourage is strategic plan and work plan updates. And that's kind of a bread and butter consulting service that we offer our communities. You can't get there if you don't know where you're going, right? And so that's what the whole planning process is about. But in a nutshell, that's Main Street, our services, what you all are doing in Lyons and how we would like to help. Are there any questions or concerns? Yes.
Thank you
Upton.
so much. Thank you so much,
Oh.
Tracy and Larry. I just want to say that we are so grateful for your partnership and your expertise. And I also, before I take questions, want to give a shout out to Kim and Brianna as well, because they've really been spearheading all this work and they do a phenomenal job. And it's just a terrific team. If you wouldn't mind unsharing your screen, thank you. Trustee Edding, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. I've got a couple questions. Let me ask one, and then I'll cede the floor. One of the challenges, at least personally, I think that we've had downtown is a big inconsistency in signage, and not particularly, where you walk or anything like that, but the different businesses having different qualities of signs. And at one point, we had a liquor store, and I think they just took some plywood and spray painted it, and then said Bill's Liquor Store. We had a used goods store that had a really low quality sign. How do you address those issues? Is there a continuous grant type situation the town can be in where the new businesses on Main Street can get grants to have really high quality signs?
Unfortunately, we don't. That was part of our Main Street Open for Business grant is that we did provide, a lot of the businesses that got subgranted the funds did receive, did use it to upgrade their signs. That is something that the communities do frequently on a local level is facade improvement and signage programs. I'm going to let Larry address this though, because that's really his area of expertise.
Sure. So the first things that I thought is, is there a signage ordinance? And what does that look like? There are some examples that other Main Street communities have created signage ordinance. I can share that with you guys if you want to see what some of those look like. They're not very restrictive. They encourage more of the handmade sign look, not backlit signage. You don't want to see things that are backlit plastic downtown. You want to see things that are indirectly lit or directly lit from outside fixtures. A really good way to actually encourage business growth and development historically is the smaller scale facade and signage and paint and those types of and awnings, because it's great to have canvas moving on down in the downtown. So if signs would meet, say, certain guidelines, then maybe the town would potentially find a way to fund a small matching grant or something to do that. And signs are expensive, so I mean. Yeah. And to do good ones, it's expensive. To do the hand carved looking signs or the ones that have figure detail that stick out from the buildings or things like that. And that opens a whole nother realm of possibilities is, how does the signage need to appear? Like you're saying, it's all over the place. Is it flat against the building? I mean, that happened in some places that towns decided we couldn't have projecting signs anymore. And it's a real loss, in my opinion, whenever that happens. But yeah, so, starting with ordinance and figuring out really what it is, and I can maybe help you guys with that to some degree. I've never done like a signage charrette, but if you had enough local folks that might be interested and you thought there might be a way to access some funding, maybe for some pilot projects, maybe 5 businesses or something, that could be interesting. And we could, run through the whole mill and figure out what that ordinance would look like based on what people would be willing to do and what the needs are and also what folks like.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment and then cede the floor. We did update our downtown design guidelines, and it was signage ordinances or regulations in that. I stepped off the planning committee, and so I don't know exactly what eventually went through. But what even though people are obeying the regulations, still the quality can vary greatly. Even though, okay, yeah, you met the letter of the law here, but the quality is just kind of third world in some cases. And so I'm just curious how, you've helped businesses out and kind of quietly nudge them to say, this just does not meet standard. But thank you. Then I have another question, but I'll let somebody else go.
Thank you. Trustee Dillman?
So just a comment, I work in Leadville. quite a bit of the summer, and I have an electric car, and I've been parking at that charger that you have while I go eat dinner. And last week I talked to some people who are doing the same thing. So if it costs $1 or $1.50 for the town, it definitely is bringing in business to the downtown.
Cool example.
Yeah, the EVs, we love partnering on the EV parking stations, especially as more, stations are going in and more people have those cars. We actually had a woman from Bicycle Colorado speak to our managers last week and talking about how sometimes those end up on the fringe of downtown, right? And how your downtown is then missing out on those people who have to spend half an hour, charging their electric vehicle. And so we really want to encourage that in places where they're already on more of the outskirts. She was talking about making sure you have like a pathway or wayfinding signage into the downtown, or maybe you have a bike share there so that, they're not just out where the chains are and are getting into where your small business owners are. I do want to make a quick mention here too, though, just in terms of signage and the Main Street Open for Business funds. I do want to give a shout out. You all did pursue our Main Street Open for Business grant. We had $21 million in requests for $6.9 million in funding. And it broke our hearts when we couldn't give them all to our own main streets here and help out the town of Lyons. We're really hoping to prove the success of the program, and when you have, quality facades and quality signs, and just that attractive exterior, it can make that big of a difference, and to hopefully see additional funding in the future and get that into all of our Main Street communities.
Thank you. There's never enough money to go all the way around. I know. Okay, Trustee Williams, Trustee Elson, before we hand it back over to Trustee Edding, any questions from either of you? Trustee Williams?
I just really appreciated this. I'd looked through it pretty carefully earlier today, and you guys did a great job in taking us through it. It was so enjoyable. Thank you. Informative.
I'll throw one more idea in there. You mentioned there was some revenue from marijuana sales. I'm not saying that would be the right business to fund something like a signage grant, but could the city partner with some entities like that to actually provide money that would incent higher quality materials? And then you could actually list what the materials are that are appropriate, because some of the new modern materials really weren't around whenever these buildings were built and the downtown was here. I mean, even if you look back 30 years ago or 50 years ago. So that could be kind of cool. I could really see more of a, not an old world vibe, but more of a historically accurate vibe, I think.
Thank you. Trustee Elson, do you have anything to add?
So I don't have any questions. I think it was a great presentation, great ideas. I think it's really a great opportunity for the town to work with you guys.
Okay. All right, I'll toss it back to you, Trustee Edding.
Yeah, I just have one other, I don't know if it's a question or a comment or just a search for ideas, but one of the other issues we have downtown is we do have businesses in there that don't per se have a retail component. And so people are walking by and there's virtually no reason to go in. And that kind of kills like the momentum of downtown. So one of the things that we did on the planning commission is we tried to basically zone something called artisan manufacturing. That is where like we have one facility downtown where they're building these really, really high-end mountain bikes. We zoned them with requirement that they had a retail component, that they had to have an open door. Then COVID hit and it never happened. I don't know what your thoughts are, if you've worked on any downtowns in the area of artisan manufacturing, or how you can keep the downtown having a very strong retail component and work with the businesses that might be there that don't have a retail component.
Yeah, that is a continual issue, is having that retail in the downtown, right? And keeping it vibrant and open past 5 o'clock. And yeah, that kind of continuous energy, as you mentioned. I think the current phrase that we use in the Main Street program is maker space when we're talking about artisanal manufacturing. But yeah, and that's a wonderful thing, right? Because when so much can be bought online anymore, it's about the experience of being in the downtown. It's getting to know that chocolatier, that bike maker, person who makes tents. I think he had, and making that personal connection. And so we certainly have a lot of resources in that way. I think once again, it's one wants to be careful, but I think, there are, zoning ordinances. You can kind of legislate what you allow in your downtown spaces, and not say, hey, we don't want an attorney or a realtor, but you need to be on the second floor, or you need to have part of your space be a coffee shop or something, to get that combined thing and have it be more than just the 9-to-5ers that are in that space. Larry, do you have any further insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, it's hard, it could be potentially hard from a property rights standpoint to have them, tell them you couldn't have a service-based business, but you could actually provide some incentive for the artisanal businesses that you're seeking. I don't know if that would be tap fees for new construction. I mean, I'm just thinking of the ways that the city can actually aid businesses to get off the ground, because that first year is really tough. And maybe it's something like a sales tax rebate or some things like that could actually go, as long as it goes back into improvements, or you could be a little creative with that maybe. And then I would say that you should really look at the town of Steamboat Springs. They're doing some really good things, like Tracy was mentioning. The downtown Steamboat, there's a Big Agnes. It's actually based out of Steamboat, or they used to have everything in Steamboat. But they still have a retail component, and you can still see some of the workings going on of the company there too, which is pretty cool. There are like a whiskey distillery that you can actually take tours of. Of course, breweries and things like that are really popular for that, because you kind of see what's happening behind the scenes. But I get a good sense that maybe a connection there would be in order for you guys. Maybe a couple of you to make a trip and talk to Lisa Popovich, the Main Street manager. She, Brianna and Kim might need to take a field trip and go talk with her for a day, and really kind of feel out how they've been doing this. They have a wonderful farmers market. They have a street that's along the river, the Yampa River there. It's Yampa Street, that has just really made a tremendous comeback over the last several years. It really has. And I'm a little interested myself to understand how that all happened so quickly. But now it's really the hot place to be. Nobody really, after hours, they want to be down on Yampa Street instead of on the main street, because that's more of the commercial district. But then you have more of the breweries and the things along Yampa. But there are some artisanal businesses on the side streets and things. It works pretty well. So,
there's a great fly shop on that street. So a fly fishing shop. So
yeah. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll connect Kim and Brianna with her.
That would be great. That sounds like a fun field trip for sure. Mayor Pro Tem, I wondered if you had any comments or questions before we wrap this up.
Hi, no, I thought this was a great presentation. In particular, one of the things that I kept thinking about, and then you did bring it up towards the end, was that Broadway expansion and how to get, the backdoor storefront, looking really good is something that is particularly interesting to me as well. So thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much, Tracy and Larry. We so appreciate your partnership and your passion for helping our little town. It makes a big difference. It makes a really big difference. And so thank you so much. It's great to see you, and look forward to having you come out and visit anytime.
I was actually just there, not for business, but for pleasure at the Spirit Hound Distillery. So not quite in the main street, but nearby. No, and it truly is. And thank you for having us. It really is our pleasure and honor to help you all out doing the hard work, making your communities just great places to live and visit. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll be following up. So thanks for having us.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Okay. So we'll take a break. We'll reconvene at 7 for the meeting. So see everybody in 10 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. Going all the way up again. New meeting.
Good evening, Mr. Esserman.
Hello.
I got to say before we start that that chicken liver pate is outstanding.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll also ask, hi Trent, I'll also ask, so until we get to your portion of the meeting, if you could mute yourselves and turn off your video cameras, it really helps.
Okay.
No problem.
But we're going to be getting to you very soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
It'll be nice to have Trustee Dati back.
When does she return?
I think on the 8th.
Okay.
I
Nice.
think that's correct. Yeah.
All right. I think I see Trustee Edding. He just doesn't have his camera on. There he is. And so we're just waiting for Trustee Delman. Oh, and Trustee Williams. Okay, great. I will call the August 1st, 2022 Lions Board of Trustees meeting to order. Could we have the roll call, please, Clerk Vasquez?
Yes, Mayor Rogan,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Farrell,
Present.
Trustee Elson,
Here.
Trustee Edding,
Present.
Trustee Delman,
Present.
Trustee Williams,
Present.
and Trustee Dati.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
Visible,
liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I look forward to doing that in person very, very soon. I'll read the land acknowledgement. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho people. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
A motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Trustee Williams? Terrific. Are there any changes anybody would like to propose to the agenda? No. Let's vote tonight by using the raise hand icon so that Clerk Vasquez can more easily see. So all in favor, please raise your hand.
There we
Trustee Elson got there.
go, unanimously.
Thank you. And you can lower your hands. Okay, we'll take a short reflective moment of silence before we move into audience business. All right, thank you. So we're moving into audience business. Anyone who would like to address the Board of Trustees can do so. You'll have 3 minutes and we'll need you to state your name and your physical address, not a PO box, for the record. And you can indicate that you'd like to speak by raising your hand or turning on your camera or just unmuting yourself. I don't see anybody. Clerk Vasquez?
I do not either, Mayor.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the Boulder County Sheriff's report. Is Sergeant Christ here? Yes, Administrator Simonson.
Thank you. I received an email from Sergeant Christ earlier saying he has unforeseen family issues he needs to attend to. He did say that he had 2 items he wanted to pass along. That the festivals went very well from the sheriff's perspective, and there was no issues in town noted due to that, and that they are planning on moving into their new substation at the depot building next week. And sorry he can't be here, but he'll see you next time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hope all is well with him. The next item on the agenda is the Liquor License Authority. Do we need Clerk Davis here? There she is. Yes, Clerk Vasquez.
You will need a motion to adjourn as the trustee, then enter as the Liquor Licensing Authority.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn as the Board of Trustees and re-adjourn as the liquor, reconvene, thank you, as the Liquor Licensing Authority?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Is there any discussion? Okay, let's vote using your little virtual hand. All in favor?
Unanimously, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I know so we are now the Liquor Licensing Authority, and I think maybe Mayor Pro Tem has gone through this process before, but this board has not. So there's specific language that I'll read that Marissa, or that Clerk Davis kindly forwarded to me. So if it sounds a bit more formal than usual, that's why. I call to order a public hearing of the Lions Liquor Licensing Authority. The authority shall consider the application submitted by Aaron Esserman, owner of Diner Bar. Deputy Town Clerk, please introduce the case and enter into evidence the necessary documents.
Thank you, Mayor. We received an application to transfer the Prickly Pear Tavern license to the Diner Bar located at 160 East Main. Applicants have submitted all required documentation, including background check requirements. Staff conducted an on-site inspection of the premises with the applicants on July 7th. They have applied to receive a temporary liquor license, which was issued on July 5th. This allowed the applicants to continue with business as usual until this license is approved through local and state authority. The temporary license is valid for 120 days from the date it was issued, and it allows them sufficient time to process this new application. The town posted this notice on location on July 6th, and the clerk's office has not received any objections for this application.
Thank you. The application submitted to the clerk's office together with all supporting documents are hereby made part of the record. Any other documents presented to the authority during this hearing shall also be made part of the record if a copy is given to the clerk. Clerk Davis, was the notice properly posted and published for this matter?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. I move that the entire corporate limits of the town of Lyons be considered as the neighborhood for purposes of this liquor license application and the public hearing. Is this something that we vote on? No. Okay, great. Applicants. The applicant may make a presentation to the authority concerning the requested liquor license application. After the applicant, other interested persons will be provided an opportunity to address the authority. The applicant and other person who speaks may ask questions of and cross-examine any other person who speaks at the hearing. Would the applicant like to make a presentation? Mr. Esserman?
Hello. I would.
Please go ahead.
So my name is Aaron Esserman, and our attorney is Trent here as well with me. So basically what we have going on is kind of a dream come true, if you will, or even a redo. So I come up from hotels, fine dining back in my earlier days between, mom and pop restaurants, but I got into the corporate world to learn how to run my own business and learn the finer things rather than just cooking or the refining of things like budgets and startup costs, CapEx costs, the whole 9 yards of actually running an operation. So I went through places like the Stanley Hotel, Estes Park Resort, Park Hyatt Beaver Creek, Arabella Vale, to kind of get that kind of experience under my belt. And my last stop was Park Hyatt Beaver Creek. And then we moved to Austin to start our food truck business, as we all know, Cluckenberger. And we did get to our goal there in Austin, but we opened 5 months before COVID. So we stepped back from operations there, and it was, a hurtful thing. But having lived here while we were working in Estes Park, we wanted to kind of come back here and offer what we do best, which is food operations. So our goal when coming here was to get into a restaurant and bar. So when we saw the opportunity, we jumped on it quickly. So what we want to offer is literally a destination restaurant to bring in surrounding towns and cities, as well as Lyons, to create a community space where there's live music, creative food and beverage, a really fun and kind of, what's a good way to say it? A modernistic diner feel. Diners are close to my heart from kind of this time I spent with my father when he was in town. We'd go out early in the morning for breakfast at Waffle House. And kind of funny to say, after all these nice places I've worked, Waffle House is my favorite restaurant. But that kind of shows exactly what Diner Bar is about. It shows that whole comfort feel of, 50s, 60s, 70s. Which I wasn't there for, but I enjoyed and have enjoyed all the retro things that I've experienced, and but kind of tying in my finer cooking techniques between the French training I've got in culinary school and working under extremely great chefs that have taught me things I never would have learned from even just my own research and research on trends, or kind of the way I've always worked is I've had something to eat that I really liked. And I've always thought, how can I make this better? How can I make the presentation better? How can I jazz this up? So that's kind of what Diner Bar is all in one. It's everything I've experienced from start to finish with food. So that's what Diner Bar, and that's what we're trying to do.
So that was a great introduction, certainly much better than I could do. I do have some questions I want to run through with Mr. Esserman, if that's okay. Mr. Esserman, just for the record, can you go ahead and state and spell your name?
Yes, it's Aaron Esserman. It's AARONESSERMAN.
And you're over the age of 21, correct?
I am.
Do you consume alcohol on occasion?
On occasion, I do.
And what is your position with Finer Diner?
I'm one of the owners and the operating member and the executive chef.
And this was mentioned during the introductions, but where is your establishment located?
160 Main Street in Lyons, Colorado, 80540.
And you're currently open?
We are.
How long have you been open?
We launched for soft opening July 13th.
Do you own or lease the space?
We lease our space.
And how many years are remaining on the lease?
4 years, March 2026.
Is Finer Diner located within 500 feet of a public or parochial school?
It is not.
Have you personally ever had any beer and wine license violations?
No violations.
Why are you seeking a transfer on this beer and wine license?
We wanted to transfer. We had an opportunity to take over the building and, well, I shouldn't say building, take over the lease. So the quickest way possible to get into the operation and start in summertime instead of in the off season where it's really tough to get out of. We saw that opportunity by talking with you guys and jumped on the transfer instead of starting fresh. It helps the community, it helps us get up and running, and it helps us get through winter having a head start.
And you pretty much hit on the concept of finer diner, but will you be incorporating, will you be using the alcohol to spice up any dishes or, you know, cocktails, things like that? How will you use your background to kind of utilize that license?
Yeah, so I am a big fresh nut. Being from Florida, where I started cooking, citrus was huge in a lot of my cooking. So that kind of tied into a lot of fruit. So one of the things I'm really excited about is using fresh fruits and garnishes to not only for flavor, but for presentation. I have a huge kind of projection on you eat with your eyes first, and it is true, right? And I'm not going huge extravagant, but we're definitely serving something that looks good, not only tastes good. So I'm using my creative background with fresh products. You know, for example, our watermelon tulip has a local drylands. It's not mezcal. I can't call it mezcal because it's made here in Colorado, but we're supporting local from drylands on what they call smoked cactus. And we're infusing that with fresh pureed watermelon, simple syrup, and a tahine sugar rim. So it's a nice bright pink drink with a really cool foam on top with a local ingredient. So it just gives an example of kind of my direction on that.
It sounds like you have a pretty unique concept going. Is there anything similar to your restaurant in Lyons?
So we heard the call for breakfast and we did it. You know, it's not crazy busy yet, but the more we get the word out, I've been kind of staggering this open to not overwhelm ourselves. But we definitely heard the call for breakfast. And we also heard the call for a kind of a uppity, I wouldn't say uppity, a new familiar place to convene as the community. So I think that with the tiling we did, the 2 pool tables, foosball, which nobody has a foosball table in town, we're able to bring in people for something new and fresh.
And do you understand the responsibility that comes with holding a beer and wine license?
I do, absolutely.
How do you plan on handling that responsibility?
So we're training our staff via TIP certification now that we've kind of found our startup team that we're going to move forward with, because every restaurant has fall offs and whatnot. So we're going to be sponsoring TIP certifications for all of our bartenders and servers, as well as the serve safe. So not only the alcohol, but we're also serving safe food. But we definitely want to train our staff through a certified organization that can teach how to tell when people are over drinking, how to kindly, push that water their way without causing altercation or, de-escalating a situation or whatnot. So we're going to be paying for training. And we also have hired a great bar manager with great experience that can keep an eye out on all that stuff and reiterate what these guys should be learning and all that.
How many staff members will you have?
Somewhere in the ballpark of 20 between kitchen and front.
And in terms of alcohol service, who must present an ID in order to be served alcohol?
Everybody.
And what's your plan for handling vertical ID cards?
We're not going to accept vertical ID cards at all.
And what is your general policy for serving drinks, like the number of drinks you can serve per person?
1 per person with an ID.
And you kind of mentioned this briefly before, but how will you handle people who appear visibly intoxicated?
Well, through our training and experience, really what it is, my way of personally doing it, and I hope we can train the staff to do the rest, is, gently offering food and water and try and kind of not escape that situation, but smooth it out by, giving them something else to put in their system, and then working through it that way as a start.
Will you inform your staff that a liquor violation can result in criminal penalties for them individually?
Yes, we will.
And will you inform your staff a liquor violation can result in administrative penalties for finer diner?
Yes, we will.
And you've been mentioning food, so you'll have a minimum of sandwiches and snacks available during the hours that beer and wine served.
That's correct.
Right. So food will be available during all business hours.
They will.
Right. So it's okay with the panel. I'm going to pull up an exhibit here. Let me know.
Excuse me, Trent, we don't see your last name. Would you, for the record, please state and spell your last name?
Sure. It's my full name is Trent Cromartie, TrentCromartie, and that's bar number 52917.
Thank you.
Of course. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes, we sure can. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Mr. Ezerman, I just want you to take a look at this. And this is I'll represent for the record that this is the floor plan that was submitted. We'll enter this as Exhibit A. Does this look like a fair and accurate representation of Finer Diner's layout?
It does, yes.
What are your hours of operation?
Currently, we've just extended. We are doing 6 a.m. breakfast during the week, 7 a.m. breakfast on the weekends. We are closing currently at 10 p.m., which we will extend to 12 a.m. shortly. And then on the weekends, either 1 a.m. until or just before 2 a.m. when last call needs to be made. But right now, like I said, we're staggering, so we're adding on. But currently we're closing at 10, eventually midnight, and then currently midnight for weekends, eventually 1 a.m.
And what is the size of the space?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, you broke up.
Sure. What is the size of the space?
It's about 4,500 square feet.
Right. And where in this layout will you serve the alcohol?
In the front end and the patio. So where you see, that's correct. At the bar, that's where all the drinks are going to be poured.
And how will you monitor alcohol in the business?
All management, and that includes me from executive chef in the kitchen. My wife is front of house, oversight, and our bar manager.
Will you have any signs like no alcohol past this point, anything like that?
We do have those signs, yes.
How and where will you store alcohol in the business?
We have a cage upstairs that is locked on the door to get upstairs, as well as the cage itself.
Yeah, I want you to take a look at this next exhibit. And just for the record, this is the amended floor plan that was submitted in advance of the hearing, depicting the second floor of Finer Diner. Mr. Ezerman, is this an accurate depiction of where the alcohol will be stored in the business?
Yes, it will be stored in that liquor cage area towards the bottom.
Thank you. And who will have access to the areas where the alcohol is stored?
Only management.
How many staff members will be serving alcohol at any one time?
We would have up to 3 bartenders, but we're going to try and keep it at 2 at once. And then servers will be taking alcohol from service bar to patrons, but the bartenders are the only ones allowed to serve alcohol on site.
And all those staff members will be aware of the laws governing the service and consumption of alcohol, correct?
That is correct.
Right. How will you work to ensure staff compliance with the liquor code?
So what we want to do is frequently offer tests to our staff members. Frequently, on the fly is what we call it in the restaurant world, just kind of asking questions as we go, kind of refreshing ourselves, not only for the staff, but even for us to keep, the juices flowing on what's right and what's wrong.
Sure. So let's talk about the needs and desires. How would you describe the neighborhood surrounding Finer Diner?
The neighborhood surrounding, there's a good mix of everybody here. Again, I really think that breakfast is a huge point for Lions. One of the main things I've heard the last 3 weeks is when people sit down, they see breakfast all day on the menu and they're like, huh, breakfast and Lions. So that is definitely a huge, I think it's a home run, to be honest. It's a need that needed to be filled, and we were fortunate enough to be able to fill it. As well as, you know, there's a larger space for pool. We want to bring in pool tournaments, not tournaments, but more of leagues to, you know, create more of a community space. We want to support local musicians on our patio, on our beautiful stage that we're lucky enough to have. So, you know, that kind of got into more of what we're offering as well with the community. But I think having that diverse community, we can hit a lot of needs of everybody.
Have you talked to others within the designated area about your concept?
Yes, we have.
What kind of feedback have you received?
So it's funny. I've talked to several people before this location was even an option, asking, you know, some of the people that I've known have been here a long time or involved, you know, pretty deep in the community. What does this town need? And everybody said a diner. So I've spoken with several people, and the consensus is diner, and it kind of fits perfectly into what I love.
So do you think the designated area needs and desires another beer and wine license establishment?
I do. I think that we're offering something different, and we're not kind of playing off of what others are doing. I think that we have one of the main things I wanted to do was not offer the same beers that other people are, right? Like domestic's fine, but as far as other local breweries are involved, we wanted to, yeah, okay, fine, we'll still have Avery, but we're not going to have what the 3 other restaurants from Avery have. So yes.
And do you think the continuation of this beer and wine license
do I think the say that again?
Apologize. Do you think the continuation of the beer and wine license would help improve the economy, health, welfare, and morals of the neighborhood?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think that we're going to offer a respectable bar where we can cut things out right when we see them and not have altercations, and training our staff how to kind of shoot it down before it happens. It's kind of one of those expecting your guests' needs in a different way, kind of, you know, watching it before it happens, kind of seeing things escalate and de-escalating them before. So again, one of the main items that's important to me is having a respectable place of business and bar.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Esmond. That's all I have for you. There may be some follow-up from the board, so I will hand it off.
Sure.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the applicant? Trustee Edding.
That was really exhaustive. Appreciate it. There's one point I didn't quite get. Is there going to be a limit or a time limit in which somebody that's underage can enter the front door? Or can somebody underage be in the premises during all operating hours?
We're going to cut off anybody under 21 at 10 p.m. And cut off means not drinking, obviously, but not being allowed to play pool or whatnot, other than staff members. Like we do employ several busboys that are under 18, but we're trying to get them out before 10 p.m. anyways.
Okay, so even in the dining area, you have to be over 21 to be there after 10 o'clock.
That's correct.
In the pool tables. Okay, all right, thank you. That's all.
Anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Clerk Davis. Is or will the applicant be in legal possession of the premises, and has the applicant provided to the town evidence of ownership or lease agreement?
Yes.
Does the zoning of the property permit the proposed liquor use?
Yes.
Does the applicant hold another liquor license or have an interest in any other business which is licensed under the state laws governing liquor licenses?
No.
Did the town's investigation of the applicant disclose any reason why the applicant cannot hold the license that he is requesting?
No.
Has a liquor license been denied for the same premises or for a premise within 500 feet of the applicant's premises within the last 2 years based on a finding that the needs of the neighborhood do not support a new liquor business?
No.
Terrific. I am looking for a motion. Mayor Pro Tem.
I move to approve the liquor license application for Diner Bar. I specifically find that the establishment meets the reasonable needs of the neighborhood and the desire of the adult residents of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Is there a second? Trustee Williams?
Let's second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote using the raise hand button. All in favor?
Passes
All right.
unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Esserman. Looking forward to some good times playing foosball at your place.
Thank you. That was a big point for me. It was at the foosball table.
We can talk about air hockey sometime, maybe.
All right.
Is there a motion to adjourn the liquor licensing authority and reconvene as the Board of Trustees?
So moved.
Thank you. Trustee Williams, is that a second?
That's a second.
Terrific. Let's vote on that. All in favor? We're getting good at the hand thing. I love it.
Passes unanimously.
Terrific. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
As well, thank you.
You too.
Okay, moving on to ordinances and public hearings. We have a second reading of ordinance 1124, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending certain sections of the Lyons Municipal Code and adding an Article 9 to Chapter 2 concerning code compliance officials. Is there a staff report?
Hello, Mayor and trustees. Sorry, I was just getting off the phone. Had family call come in. We are doing the ordinance on the code enforcement.
Yes, sir.
Yep, that's what I thought I heard. And so again, as we went through the first reading on that code modification, it was to go ahead and put in some specific code to document where the code enforcement officer has the authority to do the code enforcement. So it will be a little more clear. And then the second portion of that was to go ahead and allow him to have the authority to write citations. He happened to mention just earlier today, he was out in Bone Park and there were 4 dogs off leash that he had to deal with. So for everyone out there now, we are really serious about keeping your dogs on the leash as one of the incentives or the reasons for bringing up some of these modifications. The last time at the first reading, there was no recommended changes. So we did bring that back as it was. And are presenting it again for second reading and public comment.
Okay. Are there any questions for Director Kaplan before we open the public hearing? Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm not sure, am I supposed to make my comments now or this is just questions? This is just questions at the moment, right?
So typically we do questions during this right after the staff presentation. And then once we do a motion in a second, then we'll do comments.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So
I have
if there's
no
no
questions,
okay.
no, yeah.
So I'll then open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on this ordinance? I don't see any. Clerk Vasquez?
I do not either.
Okay, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion. Trustee Williams.
I move to approve ordinance 1124 and ordinance adding an Article 9 to Section 2 of the Lyons Municipal Code concerning code compliance officials' responsibilities.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Trustee Delman. We have a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have a comment?
I guess my only comment is that I really would like to emphasize that while I think this is a good and necessary addition to the compliance officer's duties, I really want to emphasize that I believe that the essence of the original intent of his job is to, you know, I always thought it as more of an advocate in terms of code compliance and education. And so my hope is that that will just continue to, be the first steps forward. So as much as possible.
I agree with you. Thank you. Any other comments? No. Well, I will say that my dogs got attacked by an off-leash dog this weekend by a Great Dane. And yeah, everybody's okay. But I think this will go a long way in making the whole town safer for lots of folks, and hopefully help out staff as well. So if there are no other comments, I'll call for the vote. Please raise your hand to indicate approval.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have a first reading of ordinance 1125. We have a staff report.
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and cover this one if that's okay with you, Mayor Rogan.
Great. Yes.
So I just want to give the board a little bit of background on this one. There were some attachment, of course, in the cover memo, but for a long time, sorry, was someone have a question? Or? Sorry, I thought I heard someone interrupting. For a long time, there's been a question about really what the definition of a campsite is under the town's lodging tax. As you know, we tax both hotel accommodations as well as campsites and short-term rentals. But it was never defined what a campsite was, and so there was some discrepancy or some ability for the town administrator, the finance director, to interpret the code to say what a campsite was. But the issue kept coming up with various taxpayers within town about what it was. During the Planet Bluegrass renegotiations, it was negotiated with the Planet Bluegrass folks. They're the ones this primarily is applied to, about what number of campers would constitute a campsite. And so that was incorporated into all their documents. We redid quite a few of their agreements last year, you may remember. But as part of that additional clarity, to add additional clarities in case there'd be other people doing campsites, the town board at that time directed us to prepare an ordinance which reflected what was agreed to in those agreements with Planet Bluegrass, which was 5 people equaling a campsite. And so that was done. That ordinance was passed on first reading. However, during some of the confusion with the sheer number of documents that would need to be approved for the Planet Bluegrass modification to their site plan, it somehow got lost on passing on second reading. And so since many months have passed now since that first reading, it seemed advisable to bring this back as a first reading to start the process over. But really, all this is really a housekeeping matter to make sure the code reflects what has been agreed to in the Planet Bluegrass documents. Any questions on that? I realize it's a little complicated, but.
Trustee Edding? You're muted.
Sorry, yeah. Button. So this is really regarding what a campsite means in reference to Planet Bluegrass, right?
It would apply to all taxpayers. Just at this time, Planet Bluegrass is the one that it applies to.
Okay, and do you mean to address in the future how we could disassociate like what's going to become glamping with an actual motel? Does it have that intended purpose?
This does not. I mean, really, this is just intended to enact that change was already made in their documents to clarify that 5. The opinion of staff was that it didn't make sense to make those changes at this time, any additional changes, because with the pending ballot measure that may be on, we should figure that out first and then worry about the associated effects of glamping versus camping. Right now, at least under the way the code works currently, it doesn't matter if it's camping or a hotel, it's $2, right?
Sure, yeah.
And in the future, depending on how we do it, if it's just a flat percentage rate, it may not matter, right? Once again, it's just being applied to all accommodations of 5% or 4%, whatever the board decides. And so I didn't want to overcomplicate this by trying to introduce those concepts at this time.
Okay, yeah, because I was just reading in our Alliance Municipal Code there, in regards to what I was referring to about exactly what is a campsite. It does say a campsite is something with a temporary or movable structure. Now, I know you're trying to address something completely different with that, but I was just wondering if that was going to affect this definition or not. It sounds like they're separate things, so I don't want to conflate them.
Yeah, I think, one, this doesn't address that. And then two, it doesn't really matter because all lodging is taxed the rate of $2,
Yeah.
whether it's camping.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Is there a motion? Trustee Edding?
Oh, geez, can I just say so moved? Or do I have to read?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1125?
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? No. Terrific. I'll call for the vote using the raise hand button. All in favor?
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So then we're moving on to consent. Clerk Vasquez, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
I sure will. Item 1 was continued to the 8:15 meeting. Item 2 is resolution 2022-76. Oh, I'm sorry. That was also continued to the August 15th meeting. So item 3 is resolution 2022-77, resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving to opt out of a direct payment of opioid settlement funds. Item 4 is resolution 2022-78, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the development review of Spirit Hound Distillers development plan can be subject to the minor development review process. Item 5 is resolution 2022-79, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, waiving the requirement for Spirit Hound Distillers to install a paved parking lot. Item 6 is the August accounts payable. Item 7 are the July 18th, 2022 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes. And item 8 is the July 19th, 2022 special Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Mayor Pro Tem?
I would like to pull something. So do I need to pull that before we move to approve the rest?
No, we need a motion and a second, and then I'll ask if anybody has anything they would like to pull. So is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second, Trustee Edding?
Yeah, I second.
Terrific. We have a motion and a second. Would Mayor Pro Tem like to pull something? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting confused. I thought my hand was still raised and that was confusing. So yeah, I'd like to pull number 6, please.
Okay.
Payable.
That's the accounts payable. Anything else anybody would like to pull? Okay. We'll vote on the consent agenda minus the August accounts payable. All in favor, please.
Passes
Terrific.
unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a little curious about the number of core reports that have been pulled by Angelique Layton, and how many have been made over the last year. It looks like on this particular accounts payable, there was something again in June. Is that correct?
Yeah, so over, I'm trying to think, there's been several, both by Angelique and by the other owners of the property. So Angelique is with Sarah Toole. There's a whole other side of this, represented by CJ Connett, and they filed a few months ago, from my recollection, a core request, which is very expansive. Angelique filed one more recently in June, which was even more expansive than the one that CJ Connett filed. And we do recover some of that money, but as you know, we've said in the past that it's ultimately always a losing battle. Whenever you get a court request, you're going to lose money on it because the amounts are statutorily set. So I think there's been a total of 2 that I can remember, and maybe even be another one though over this case, but certainly the other side courted the town, and then Angelique did as well.
Is it repetitive of going back and just reviewing, months and months over and over, or is it for now becoming more of a very short window of time?
So they're different parties, so they're entitled to all the same information. So Angelique was able to, her request was a little bit broader than the previous party. And then 2, it was obviously for the stuff that had already been reviewed for the previous party, we didn't re-review that. We just, all that was put back in. And we had to go look for what additional things were out there that were beyond the scope of the last request, or in this case, there had been 2 months of documents that needed to be gone through as well. And I'm not lying when saying there are thousands of emails relating to this.
Clerk Fescus.
That's what I was just going to say. It's not so much the hard documents. They're putting in a core request
For emails.
It's saying, I want to see every email ever sent on this. When IT pulls it, it's literally thousands and thousands of emails because it's a response. It's just a big mess is what it is. But it's a lot of repetitive stuff that we've got to weed through.
And I think they pay, what is it, 15 or 17.25 an hour for it, but I mean, it's not.
And then there's a cap per state statute that we can only charge them up to so much money on it. We put in there that they get the first hour free for a core, and then I think we charge $30 an hour, but then you can only charge them so much per state statute. So when you're dealing with IT working on it and Brandon
And staff, and this was a bad one, but unfortunately it's not the worst one we've gotten in terms of we want emails for 3-year period or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's no way that we can add any kind of limitation to this or seeking a court to say, for crying out loud, this is abuse.
We could go to court on some things if it's outside of the scope of a court request, or it's if we said, we can't create this document, or we don't have this document, or we can't give you this document, we could go to court for a protective order. But in this case, what they asked for were things that we had to give up pursuant to state statute. And just because it's voluminous doesn't mean we get more time to do it, but we can't say no because it's too voluminous. If we have it, we have to give it to them.
Well, I just want to say publicly, for the record, I think that this is extreme abuse of our staff's time and of our attorney's time and our IT's time that is costing the town money. And I think they're doing it on purpose, and it's completely manipulative. And so publicly, I find this to be gross. So thank you.
Trustee Edding, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do we have any ballpark idea of how much this has cost up to this point? I mean, how much has this hurt the Lions taxpayers? Is there a dollar figure we can put to that?
We would have to go through the last couple of years of attorney's bills, by category. It wouldn't take a long time. We can certainly find out.
Or the Angelique Layton Sarah Toole property, just everything related to that, or just core requests. I think there's 2 core requests and then a whole bunch of time regarding just the property generally. So
yeah, I'm just wondering, ultimately, I would just like to inform the public how much these people are taking of their tax dollars, how much they're absolutely wasting all of our tax dollars. I don't know if it's just being adversarial to do that, but I do think the public should have some knowledge of it. I'll leave my comments at that.
it's going to be a lot. I mean, it's staff time, my time, other consultants that the town has, IT consultants, the building inspector,
Fire marshals,
fire department, the police department. I mean, the list kind of is very expansive. So
yeah, I don't believe either of the parties are paying taxes in Lions.
no, they're not.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was all I needed.
Any other comments? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the August accounts payable? Trustee Edding?
So moved.
Thank you. Trustee Williams?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we have no boards and commissions this week, so we will move on to general business, which is discussion direction to staff on potential ballot measure questions. Do we want to do a quick staff report?
Yeah, I think I can kind of sum it up. So from the workshop, we discussed two different ballot measures we'd like direction on. One being a potential change to the lodging tax. There's a few decision points there to be made, one percentage versus a flat fee. As I explained, there's a case that says that very explicitly that statutory municipalities can charge a flat rate, but it said nothing about whether you could charge a percentage rate. And at least there's an argument that a percentage rate would equate to an income tax, which we are prohibited from charging. And so that would be the potential legal argument. A number of municipalities since then have gone to a percentage. Statutory municipalities, including the town of Eagle, which was the one that originally kicked this whole thing off. So they've gone from a $2 charge, which is what the town's Alliance was modeled after, to a 6% at this point in time, lodging tax. But, just because, someone has a bad legal argument doesn't mean they can't make a legal argument. The town would still be on the hook for defending that lawsuit if it were to ever come. So that's decision point one, flat rate versus percentage rate. There's also the question which we really didn't discuss in the workshop, which is what should the money be spent for? Some of these ballot measures I've looked at have said, we're going to spend this on parks, we're going to spend this on marketing. Others are much more general to say we're going to spend this money on whatever it is we think it needs to be addressed with concern the impacts of hotels and other types of lodging. So you can kind of go very specific or very general. And then there's, of course, the decision about whether we want to split out camping or not. That may not be necessary if you go the percentage. If you go the flat rate, it probably is necessary to some degree. But those are kind of the different decision points on that one. So we can either take that piece of this now, or I can go and introduce the other ballot question. It's up to you.
Let's take this one first, so that the information is all fresh in our minds.
Okay.
So I think the first question should be, do we want to go with a percentage or a flat fee? Because that would inform whether we split camping out or not. Trustee Williams.
I think we should go with a percentage, not a flat fee. Looks to me like there have been enough positive results of those various lawsuits that I doubt the likelihood of us having to encounter that is all that high, but I do appreciate Attorney Dittman's concerns about that.
Yeah. And just to clarify, there hasn't been any lawsuits since that Eagle case, but just the fact that a lot of municipalities have passed these and no one has challenged them. But it doesn't mean that in Lyons we couldn't be challenged and we wouldn't have to defend it and we would incur the legal costs to do that. But I just want to make that clear for the record.
Thanks for the clarification. I still would feel the same way.
Thank you.
Trustee Edding?
Yeah, could we talk a little bit in more detail about what we mean by splitting camping out? Is it possible to go on a percentage for a traditional motel, but then keep flat on camping? Is that possible? Is that what we're talking about?
I think my understanding of the question right now is whether we just want to do a percentage for everything, or a flat fee. But potentially you could split them out. I mean, I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense administratively. To track those, it'd be harder to track if you have two different methods. But that's really a question, I think, for the finance director for Victoria.
Okay.
But you could legally, you could certainly say $2 for camping and 4% for everything else.
Okay. All right.
the definition of camping may become more important if you do that.
That's why I was asking these questions earlier. Okay, we're just asking questions, not making comments right now, right?
Correct.
All right, so I see the floor and we'll wait for comments.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I want to follow up on Trustee Eddie's question. I am curious to hear what would Administrator Simonson and Finance Director Icestone happen to say about that.
Administrator Simonson?
I guess I would, first of all, we haven't talked about that at all, so I guess I'd defer to the finance director on, do you think that would be very difficult to break down into two separate categories?
And two different methodologies of calculating flat fee versus percentage.
Yeah, I think, anytime you slice and dice things like that, it does add a complication to it, and a lot more of maybe a oversight needed.
Chance of error.
Yeah, with chance of error, misinterpretation, things like that. And one of my concerns is, the glamping versus the camping, and, how do we interpret whichever definition it would need to be? And, I think it could add that type of level of confusion, and, you get staff overturning and things like that. And it just, sometimes when you have that much complication, it does muddy the waters a little bit.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'd like to ask Administrator Simonson and Director Icestone whether either or both of you have a recommendation from a staff perspective.
In line with what Attorney Dittman said, it really is a choice of the elected officials in this case on the amount of risk you're willing to take regarding a percentage versus a fee. I think from staff perspective, we like the idea of a percentage so that it can self-regulate and be a progressive tax as it needs to be. But it really is not, it really is what is your potential for risk in this situation.
Trustee Williams?
Yeah, I suppose back for Attorney Dittman. In Eagle, I'm assuming that you have a lot of lodging providers who in fact may well have their own association, which may well have decided to do this. That would not be the case in Lyons. Would it be your professional opinion that would or would not make a difference in the likelihood of that?
I mean, ultimately, it doesn't really matter, I guess, to a certain degree. I mean, I see your point that there's more lodgers than Eagles, therefore they'd come together in association. It was actually a pretty small lodger, from my read of the case, that sued the town of Eagle. And so I think if you have an individual or a business that's motivated enough and has the financial resources, regardless of how many you have, they could still make the argument. And as I've mentioned before, I think there's a really good argument that percentage-based occupation tax is not an income tax. I think it makes logical sense. But there's the wording of the statute is such that you can certainly make an argument which is cohesive that it is. And the case was not definitive on saying, oh yeah, you can definitely go forth and do a percentage base. It said you could on a flat base. So there's definitely room for an argument and potential room for appeal.
Yes, Trustee Williams.
Yeah, I still feel like the biggest difference is that the more exclusive the property, the higher the nightly fee. We have at least a couple of events here that likely would have significantly higher fees during that weekend we just finished. Any hotel that comes to town is likely going to have yeah, it'll be a good bit higher at that time. The percentage, I think, just yields us more income on the whole. And that to me is a greater interest in that. And yes, again, Attorney Dittman.
Oh, no, I'm totally with you. You go ahead and finish. I just wanted to kind of close the loop, if you will, why that's important, Okay. So, occupation taxes, like which lodging taxes are under Colorado state statute, are meant to address the impacts of a particular occupation. And so me agreeing with you, Trustee Williams, is that if, there are more people renting rooms, it makes sense, at least from my perspective, that they would pay more, whether it be percentage or a flat fee, because there are impacts on the community on sanitation and sewer, and the use of town services is greater. And so I think is what I'm hearing you say, but I just wanted to kind of put the finer point on it.
Yeah, that is in fact what I'm saying.
Thank you. Other thoughts, Trustee Elston? We haven't heard from you about this.
Oh, so I kind of agree. I'm at the percentage as opposed to the flat rate, and I think it's so I think it's worth the risk. And I agree with what Trustee Williams said. There will be places that will have much higher fees per night, so it could bring more in, and it offsets. Like Trustee Otting wanted to lower the camping fees because it actually does that by doing the percentage. So I'm in agreement.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Williams, another comment?
Yeah, is it an appropriate point to talk about what that percentage might be or why we might want to consider that, or is that another issue that you're going to be bringing up later?
Let's table that for now, and we'll bring it up later. Trustee Delman, what are your thoughts?
I'm all for the percentage as well.
Okay. And Trustee Etting?
So my head is that obviously for the percentage, but I think, although I understand the points that it will complicate things to keep camping as a flat fee and hotels, traditional hotels as a percentage, I do think going to a percentage complicates Planet Bluegrass. And I'm curious as to what other people's thoughts are. Does it complicate Planet Bluegrass? Because that has a lot of camping. It's not a year-round campground by any means. And the camping is also associated in many instances with the actual entrance to the festival itself, depending on which campground. So I think in some sense, percentage would complicate Planet Bluegrass. And if we could just keep Planet Bluegrass as it is on the flat fee, I think that would simplify that a lot and go with a traditional lodging as percentage. That's what I'd like to continue the conversation. But I'm not sure I believe what I'm saying. I never know if I always believe what I'm saying. So more discussion there would be totally fine with me.
Well, and yes, Administrator Simonson.
I was going to say that in previous discussions with Planet Bluegrass, they do indicate that they don't have a separate camping fee. And so this, this could complicate things there. We may have to redefine. Right now it's based on the number of people in a campsite, but they don't have a separate camping fee, is my understanding. So it would probably have to remain a little different with them.
And in fact, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask you, Attorney Dittman, if you have thoughts on this matter.
I just wanted to kind of dovetail off what Administrator Simonson said. We've actually changed a lot of the documentation to indicate that even though they don't charge a camping fee, that the price of the ticket includes the camping, and that $2, is for every 5 people to do that. That was an issue. And so I guess there would be a question which we would have the power to interpret, but it may cause additional issues with them and their existing agreements about, do you charge, the percentage to the full price of admission? Do you charge it to something else? I mean, that certainly a consideration we'd have to work out.
So So is it true then that if I were to buy a three-day pass to a festival, the price would be the same whether I camped or not?
I think that's currently correct, is my understanding.
That's my understanding as well.
Trustee Williams?
Would it not be possible for them, and just, I am concerned about things not being too complicated for them, but would it not be possible for them to just arbitrarily say, the ticket's $100, the fee for camping is in fact 30 of that, and the percentage at 5% is therefore, $1.50 that is related to the lodging tax. Would that be a simple enough solution for them, as just to arbitrarily say that a portion of it would be that?
I think we could make that interpretation as the taxing entity, that probably in coordination with them, or they could just, or alternatively, they could just say there's a $10 adder for camping that you can select yes or no, or 20 or 30 or whatever. Then we would collect a portion of that.
Would it be possible to make it that simple for them, and and for us to be comfortable with that? Yeah. So that's exactly what I'm asking.
It's up to them. I think we couldn't force them to say this is how you're going to charge your tickets, but it would certainly make sense to do it that way.
Yeah, and I think that regardless, we're going to have to work with them on
Right.
this, because we want it to be positive for everybody. So, Trustee Elson.
So I was just looking on their Plan Bluegrass website, and it looks like they do charge for camping, because it's a 3-day pass is $185, and on-site camping, which includes a 3-day pass, is $260.
Well, there's your answer.
Well,
So
I think that's new though.
it could be new. So I'm looking at it now. So, but I'm saying it might change how we negotiate with them later on. That's all.
Yeah, well, we may not have to negotiate with them if that's
Right.
the case.
Yes. Right. That was all.
Yeah. Okay. Director Kaplan, I take it you came here to say that very thing.
Yes, I was going to say you could look on site to see the ticket, how they do their breakdown, and see then to get an idea of camping versus non-camping.
Okay.
And maybe this is a question for Victoria and Mayor Rogan, but that's different though, right, than what we've talked about in the past.
Yes, indeedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my recollection as well, is they were saying they were not able to break out how many people were purely camping with it. But
Right. Which
we would, and I should say, for the time frame for a decision and direction on this could be for us to get a little more information for you. We do have one more meeting before we need to finalize a lodging tax question.
Okay. Well, and Administrator Simonson, do you think it would be worthwhile to sit down with the Planet and talk about this staff to staff, so there are no surprises, and see if we can come to some sort of agreement?
Well, absolutely, but I think if we afford that to Planet Bluegrass, we may also want to talk with Riverbend and kind of get an impression of, do they consider glamping, camping, or lodging? I mean, just to get an idea, and just from all the different parties that will be most significantly affected.
Do you think, would that be onerous on staff to do?
Well, not if we can, get a hold of folks in a timely way.
Okay. Okay. So I know that also our next meeting is pretty jam-packed. So I want to keep that in mind too. Mayor Pro Tem?
So I have a question. It's a little bit different direction, but it came up, I thought, during the DOLA presentation, that was really kind of interesting when they were talking about a sales tax rebate program. Would it be beneficial to have in the language of why or where this tax dollars might go towards? So say infrastructure or along those lines, or do we not want to put ourselves in the position of committing extra tax dollars to something specific that could be impacted?
Well, I think that's the next, I'm really glad you brought that up because that's the next question after we decide which way we want to go, percentage or flat fee. That's the very next thing. So I'll ask, is there anybody who wants to go with a flat fee versus a percentage? Okay, so we're in agreement that we would like to pursue a percentage pending discussions between staff. And then, so Mayor Pro Tem, to your point, what should we use the money for? And, you know, I keep in mind that there will be more boards after this one that will reap the benefits of the taxes, and the needs of the town may change. So I am mostly interested in flexibility, but I wonder if there are other thoughts. Trustee Williams?
Flexibility, absolutely. I wouldn't want to tie the hands of a future board to lock that into something like parking. If in fact later on we don't have issues with parking any longer, I think I think it's better to be able for the staff and the board to be able to look at where the greatest need is at any particular time.
Thank you. Trustee Edding?
I agree with the idea that just keeping it general is good, but I do also think it's good to tell the people why you're raising taxes specifically. And I would consider the discussion of the parks because that comes up. Town Administrator Simonson, you talk about the parks having a difficulty over the summer with all the maintenance and everything. And I don't want to raise sales tax to fund the parks. So I wouldn't have an issue with just saying this all goes to the parks. And if it does, then at the very least, the parks are better funded and money can go elsewhere. But anyway, that's my thought.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Well, one of my
Mayor Pro Tem.
so one of my thoughts was I'm intrigued by the idea of a sales tax rebate program. And so I'm kind of wondering if and maybe I'm taking two different ideas and bringing them together in one, and it's not necessary, but I'm kind of wondering if we were to take a percentage of this passing and a percentage of this sales tax that could create some kind of a rebate program for economic vitality or something that we could be doing that could help, you know, our small businesses on Main Street or something along those lines. And it being somewhat open so that it could be flexible of a business coming forward and needing help with something. I don't know, but I don't know if that needs to be defined within this or if this can pass and then that's something that we can create later.
Attorney Dittman?
Yeah, so I've looked at a lot of different ballot measures for people who have passed these at this point, and I think there's like really two philosophies that I kind of see, and I think it's really up to what they think their electorate will support. Some of them, like Eagles, for example, was extremely specific. You know, originally, and even their newest iteration of it, where it's like we're going to use half the money for parks and half the money for marketing, and I suspect they did that in order to say, hey, general electorate, we're not just raising money to spend on whatever. We want to show you we're doing this for a very specific purpose. Other people have done this much differently. The city of Golden, for example, said that we're going to spend on anything the city council thinks is necessary to address the impacts of hotels. So very broad, still kind of limited extent. We're still going to address the impacts of hotels, but you know, much broader, so giving them much more discretion. And I really think this comes down to is how people think their electorate will vote, whether they need a specific purpose or whether they trust their council or town board enough to say, we'll let you decide what it goes towards.
Trustee Williams?
You know, somebody who travels over 100,000 miles a year, I can tell you every city in America that has ridiculous fees for building stadiums and everything else that I end up paying. Boston might be the worst. El Paso is another horrible place. I think one of the things we use to sell our people on this is, you know, we really have not had adequate revenue. We've been living on FEMA funds. And if we don't want our local residents to end up be paying higher taxes, one of the best things for us to be able to do is to pass it along to those who are coming to visit, because it's not going to have the same level of financial impact on them that it does if we're having to raise our sales tax in town or if we're having to raise property tax. And I think that's one of our biggest selling points. Certainly cities all across the country have used it to build stadiums and everything else by putting on a lodging tax or putting it on car rentals. Those are the two primary areas that you tend to see up.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are solid messaging points. And so, Administrator Simonson, you've been around longer than we have in town. So I'm curious about your thoughts on whether these funds should be directed or more flexible.
I like having the flexibility, to use them as you need them. However, it is our own locals who will be paying for it. Passing the election language, even though the visitors will be paying it. So I do think you have to probably have enough specificity to be able to, just outline what the law says, like Attorney Dittman said, that we will use this toward impacts that visitors make on our community. And that we anticipate that will be, mostly parks and parking and other things like that, but not make a formal commitment in the lodging language in case something changes. If we have another significant natural disaster, you may not be using it toward that for a few years. You need that flexibility. But I think for our voters who have to approve the language, they're going to want to have some idea of what you're going to spend it on. Actually, today the staff went through an exercise. We tried to look at capital improvements between 2023 and 2028, basically the next 5 years. And we were saying it's a good experience to go through so that if we do decide to go for something where we want to say that we want to go toward capital improvements, the public can actually see what we have planned, for the next 5 years. You're not committing to doing it in this specific order or whatever, but they have a general idea that we have evaluated what are the most important priorities in our community. So I'd say you want it flexible enough that if circumstances change or there's a disaster in a neighborhood and we need it, you can use it. But also, frame it that the intent is that you'll use it first toward impacts that visitors make.
I would like to include infrastructure improvements. Okay, does anyone have a different approach that they'd like to talk about? So does anybody oppose that approach? Okay, and I think Mayor Pro Tem, I think your idea of how to incentivize our businesses is a great one, and I think that's a program. It seems to me to be a little bit more programmatic, and but don't want to lose that. So want to make sure to address that after the ballot question is decided. Okay, and so the next ballot question is the Sandstone Park. Yeah, Attorney Dittman?
I think there's one more question with concern to the I just neglected to preview on the lodging tax, and that is, what is the actual percentage the board would like to see?
Right. Any thoughts, Trustee Williams?
Yeah, I was waiting for that one. I'm not inclined to look at the lower numbers on that. I think folks in Boulder kind of have an idea. It's a destination location and 7.5%. That is high, but I do, again, kind of note what I said in a workshop, that the majority of states have a state lodging tax, and there are, I think, fewer than 20 that do not. And of the state and territory lodging taxes, there are, I think, about 10 whose state tax is higher than 8%. And so I know a lot have 3% in the area, but I just would be more inclined to look at 5% on that instead of 3 or 4%. And the main reason for that is, again, so we're not taxing our local people quite so much going forward, but taxing people who are coming into town, gaining the benefits of the town, and also giving us steady sources of income going forward that don't include increase in sales tax or increase in property taxes.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Ellison?
So I like the percentage too, but I'd like to have it be that if we could word it that we get a percentage up to, say 10%, and then the board has the choice of what it needs to be, higher or lower. I don't know if 10%. I don't know if 10% is too high, but I'm saying as an example.
And I think that's exactly what happens, Trustee Ellison, is we say, for example, up to 10%, and then this board can decide what that number is, and future boards can change that percentage up to 10% without going back to the voters.
Okay, that sounds good to me then.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Trustee Edding?
I guess I'm just a little worried about stating up to, I agree we should state up to a percentage, but if we make that too high, I think a lot of people would think, well, they're just going to move it all the way to the highest amount. I would be comfortable somewhere of up to like 6% in that range. And this board will decide what this board wants to do. Maybe it'll be 4 or 5%. I don't know. But I don't want to make that number really, really high. I'm afraid it wouldn't pass if we did.
Yeah, and and if we made it a lower number and it passed, and a future board wanted to raise it again, they would have to go back to the voters with another ballot measure. Is the flip side to that. Trustee Delman?
I agree with Trustee Edding that if we make it too high, that's going to scare people off, and I think that will lower our chances of getting it passed.
Okay. I'd like us all to remember that the town residents won't be the ones paying this tax. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm feeling a little conservative. I would say 5% up to 8%.
Okay. Clerk Vasquez?
Sorry, I was trying to raise my hand. The way Trustee Williams said, that's exactly how the marijuana tax was put in place. It was put in place starting at 3.5% for that year, and given the board the potential to raise it up to 10%, which it's never raised since we put it into place. So it has been done where they put it in, state the rate they want it at, and then you have the option to increase it in future years. But I don't know if but it has been done.
Attorney Denman?
Clerk Vasquez, do you have the ballot question for that one? I'm just curious to see it.
I do.
Okay.
I'll shoot it right over to you.
Yeah, no big deal. I mean, it's not, we don't have to see it right now, but I'd be curious to see how they framed it. Is I think my own personal opinion would be that I think if you're going to do an up to, especially up to 10%, the messaging around is going to be really important. To say that we're setting it at 5%, and that this is what we're going to use it for, and that this is who's going to pay it. Because I think just because we all understand that, town residents are mostly not going to be paying this unless they're staying in hotels or or short-term rental owners. People don't always interpret ballot measures that way, so something to keep in mind.
Trustee Williams?
I think it'd be really on us for messaging on that one for sure, to make sure we're not just wasting the money to get it on the ballot. And I also think that, the second you're going to double digits on that, I mean, just the whole notion of double digits in the tax, to me is probably not worth it. I'm probably with Mayor Pro Tem on thinking that 8 as a cap one, that's probably a good idea.
Okay. And I can live with 8. Trustee Elson, what do you think about 8? Okay. Trustee Delman, what do you think about 8? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem? Got a thumbs up. Trustee Edding?
8 sounds good.
Okay. All right. So there's that direction, up to 8%. All right, now should we move on to Sandstone Park? Attorney Dittman, do you want to give a little bit of background?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give another kind of quick overview on this one. So as we discussed in the workshop, voters and Lions initiated a ballot measure that says that any rezoning of a park, and that is pretty broadly written, include all zoning of a park, other than for what it is currently zoned as, requires voter approval. And so at least one application has been brought forward to utilize a portion of the existing visitor center. In order for the town to be able to lease that facility, we'd have to change the zoning to municipal, and then also change the municipal zoning classification to allow for that. But there's a couple other properties in town where people have asked for that. We didn't have the ability to do it. And so the idea, the easiest way to do this on the Sandstone Park property in particular, is to subdivide the western quarter of that property and to rezone it to municipal. And then when we have our coordinated ordinance that expands the uses of municipal zoning classification, that will allow that property to be used for Lions Arts and Humanities, or Lions Creates, excuse me, or any other future nonprofit that the town decides should be able to lease that property. And so I think what we'd recommend as a ballot measure be a question whether that the western quarter of Sandstone Park, we'll probably have to work on the wording for that piece of it, shall be subdivided and rezoned to municipal.
Thank you. Any questions about this one? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'm just curious if we need to include how much of that piece of property we're talking about subdividing, so that people don't think we're talking about cutting the park in half.
Right. No, I think I'll have to work with the town administrator and probably Director Kaplan to determine what exactly is we need to cut off. And then we'll probably say, the western, quarter of Sandstone Park, approximately this many acres, like 4 acres or whatever it may be.
It's not even an acre.
Yeah.
It's like even less than half an acre.
Half an acre, yeah.
Yeah, it is like the western 25% of the lot. But we can even include a map.
Include a map and acreage and everything, yeah.
That's a great idea. Mayor Pro Tem?
So I guess my next then follow-up would be, if we're going to go through this effort, I want to make sure though that we are identifying a decent without excessive amount of land that would be considered utility, whether we use it, or excuse me, municipal, whether we use it ever or not, to give us a future flexibility. So I'm kind of wanting to say, maybe we should be a little bit more generous than what we need, but not overly generous that people wouldn't want to vote for.
I think we'll need to sit down and kind of work it out, what we think.
Yeah.
Sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. My concern is going to be that the general public will see this as a land grab. And so I think the messaging is going to be super important. Any other questions? No? Okay, so any comments? We'll wait for Trustee Williams to come back. Trustee Gelman, would you like to move forward with this ballot issue?
Yes, I think it's a good issue worth doing.
Right. Trustee Ellison?
Yep, I would agree. I think it's worth pursuing.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Trustee Edding?
Yes.
Trustee Williams, would you like to move forward with this ballot?
Affirmative.
Okay, all right, there's the direction. Does that, Attorney Dittman, does that give you everything you need?
I think so. We will have to do some work on what the exact verbiage is for the percentage and acreage, but I think we have a pretty good idea of what that one needs to look like.
Okay, terrific. So we will move on to trustee reports. We'll start with trustee Williams and then trustee Edding.
And no report from the Historic Preservation Committee. Gave the report in the last meeting that met since then.
Okay. Trustee Edding and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Very brief, the UEB did cancel its last meeting. It has its next one this Wednesday. I'll just quickly ask town employee Kaplan, is there anything on the utility side that you think I should mention?
No, at the last meeting, I think, no, nothing I can think of.
Okay, and then I was also going to, I'll have to check with Ms. Kaplan when the next Student Advisory Council meeting is. But any suggestions as to what should be on their agenda, I'd still gladly take. I just wondering if I could get people's thoughts on asking them to weigh in on the gun ordinance, or if that would just be friction that we don't need to have. I'll just leave it at that if anybody has any thoughts.
I would love to know what their input on that is. I think that's super important.
All right, perfect. Oh, and the bus is going great. So more people should be taking the bus. I'm fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem and then trustee Elson.
Yes, the last PCDC meeting was entirely focused on the comprehensive plan. And we kind of have a new structure as to how the PCDC is going to be going forward. We're really visualizing that we're in the last stretch. So we'll be seeing, and actually Administrator Simonson outlined nicely kind of the direction between now and the end of the year. And so PCDC is going to start seeing the first round of a draft of the plan. They're going to go through that about 2, possibly 3 meetings. And then that will go to a public meeting again. That's going to be the first week it's the week of October 10th. I have a feeling it might be close to that 10th date, which I believe is a Board of Trustees meeting. So we might have to have them look at that. Not positive. And so I think it's good. And we've come up with some other ideas about how to maybe reconsider additional engagement with the community and with our various commissions as well, so that we can really ensure that we're going to get some good impact feedback. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Elson and then trustee Delman.
Yep, not that much to report. Last meeting, we had our special CMEX meeting, and the Equal Advisory Commission had their meeting, so I missed that. And then I was away after that. I didn't see any updates. And the next one, the Sustainable Futures, I believe, is next week. So nothing yet. And I do have one question though. Just looking at the calendar for the month, it looks like we have a board meeting every Monday. Is that correct? It says it's the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. I know it's not correct.
No, we're just the 8th and the 15th this month, correct, Administrator Simonson?
1st and 15th?
Then the 15th.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, 1st and 15th.
That's okay.
Okay.
I'll get on there and see if it didn't duplicate the dates, because the PCDC are on the alternating Mondays of the board. They're the second, fourth.
Okay.
So I'll get on there and update it. Thank you for catching that.
Thanks, no problem. Sorry.
Thanks, trustee Elson. Trustee Delman?
So there's not been a Parks and Rec Committee meeting since we had our last meeting, but their meeting before that was pretty much all about CEMEX.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've been deep in Dr. Cog last week and this week. And so the good news is that the Dr. Cog Subregional Forum agreed to use ARPA funds to fund the Lions Flyer. So I thought the Lions Flyer was being funded by RTD and learned that it's not. It's actually being funded by ARPA funds that are coming out of Boulder County. So more ridership would be terrific. Dr. Cog or Boulder County is getting requests to add stops along the way. And I think that once school is back in session, Trustee Edding, you'll have more company on your bus rides. So that's great. And then TIP funding, Transportation Improvement Project funding, call 3 opens on the 27th. And there's $50 million for air quality and multimodal projects. So just to let staff know that. And then I think we really should get some messaging out about the CMEX meeting on the 17th. So hope to see that. Consortium of Cities meets on Wednesday, and Friday at 10:30, there's the groundbreaking for Summit Affordable Housing. And so hope that the community can come. Hope to see as many trustees as possible there. It's going to be a really fun event. Congressman Nagoose is joining us, which is terrific. So it's a great opportunity to say hi to him as well. And that is it for me. So we're moving on to staff reports, flood recovery update. Manager Sanders, hello.
Hello, evening, everybody. I'll give you a quick rundown of the report. The 4th Avenue pedestrian bridge, the contractor has remobilized. I do not have a new updated schedule for overall completion. However, they know that our goal is to have this completed before school starts, which is August 17th. But I would also preface that apparently there is now a concrete shortage. So we could run into a delay with that. But tomorrow they are pouring the south abutment, and then they'll start working on forming up the north abutment and get that concrete pour scheduled for next week. And then when I was talking with them today, they were hoping to set the bridge as early as next week or the week after. But then we still have to do the approaches. Those have to be completed as well. But the good news is that we're back on track and moving forward with that project. The Lomar letter of map revision that we need to do for floodplain remapping for all the projects we've done with recovery. We were hoping that we were going to get some congressional dollars for this project, and we did not. So we'll need to go out and start and look for some funding for this project. And conservatively, we need somewhere between 150 to 250,000 for this. And then as far as the advance payback to the state, we have not made any new progress on that, as they haven't completed any closeouts with FEMA. So I speak with the state every other week, and I've been pushing to try and get the ball rolling on that, because they owe us about over 5 million and we owe the state, 6 million. And so there's just a lot of money that needs to still come in and out. And then finally, other projects that are not recovery related, Broadway is moving forward to 90% design in August. Trail extension had a very positive meeting with Highland Ditch about possibly putting a portion of the alignment on their property. And we're going to draft up a good faith or memo of understanding to work together through design. And if it's feasible, we'll go that direction, but it still depends on funding and feasibility for that alignment, but still slowly progressing with design, but it's taking some time there. And then Black Bear Hole, the contractor, their current deadline is to be completed by August 15th. Not sure, they're working really hard to try and make that deadline. If they do not, we have informed them that we will implement liquidated damages for every day that they're late with this project. So But it's shaping up a lot more, especially on the Second Avenue side where the trailhead's supposed to go, but there's still quite a bit of work over there at the Black Bear Hole to do as well. And the restroom has a ways to go as well. But just out there a couple times a day, checking in and trying to get that project completed as well. So any questions?
I have a question about Black Bear Hole. So this delay has been going on for quite a while, and I understand liquidated damages, but is there any potential to get somebody else in there to finish this?
That would mean like going back out to bid again, which can take 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I think it complicates things a little more bringing in a separate contractor, because then also I think it complicates your warranty, because then you have 2 different people doing the work. So we just try to incentivize them and it's in their contract, if they don't meet the deadline, that they would incur liquidated damages. So I think that's probably the best route, but I could explore and see if there's other options.
No. Do you get the sense of why it's delayed? Is it they don't have enough employees, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think somewhat of opinion of observation from doing a lot of projects with a lot of different contractors. I just feel like they're just a little over their head. I don't feel like this is the type of work they've ever done before, although we check their references. They have good references. I just think, and I mean, there have been some material delays on a few things, but it just hasn't been planned out very well on their end. As you said, I feel like with resources and timeline and I think it's just been a difficult project for them.
Okay. Any other questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
I'd like an explanation of what liquidated damages potentially means.
Attorney Denman, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So liquidated damages are as a concept are basically saying we agree that if we don't fulfill our obligations under the contract, we're going to pay a set amount every day, and we won't fight over what the damages are. Right? That's what it is, a concept. Tracy, do you remember what they are in their contract? Okay.
It's $250 a day for their contract.
So until they finish, they're paying $250 a day, and in fines basically to the town.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Administrator Simonson, Administrator's Report.
Thank you. As everyone knows, first of all, we want to say thank you to the board and all of the boards and commissions for helping give us input on the CEMEX referral response. We will be posting the entire packet on our website and sending it out to the board chairs so everyone can see what the final consensus was of the Board of Trustees and some of the different feedback from individual groups. So that should be up there tomorrow if it isn't already. As you know, we had our meeting with the Planning Commission, our joint meeting on the comp plan. We did meet and have started kind of refocusing those efforts for the year. And that timeline is also in my report. And then if you recall, we had Boulder County staff present to talk about the Boulder County transportation tax that is set to expire mid-year in 2024. It appears that the staff recommendation is going to be to recommend an extension of the 0.1% existing sales tax, 1/10 of a penny, to fund basic transportation programs in the county. So they'll be having a public hearing on that August 4th. And then we have several items, of course, although I can't believe I'm saying it's already August. There's lots of end of summer activities planned over the coming weeks. So tomorrow night, if you are not familiar with National Night Out, it is from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in Bone Park. It's an opportunity for the public to come out, meet our law enforcement and fire protection district officials. They serve dinner. It's a great time for kids to come out and get to be hands-on with equipment and meet officers and see. Usually there's a helicopter that lands and fire trucks and SWAT team trucks, and it's a great night. So 5 to 8 tomorrow night in Bone Park. This Friday, there will be Lights Out Lions that's going to be hosted by the SFC. Is it the SFC? No, PRC. And they will be doing a stargazing on Friday night after dark. And then we have three events that will be in town over the rest of the month. August 13th, the Be Strong bike ride will be doing a rest stop here in town. Venus de Miles will be hosting their event on August 27th. And then we have Rocky Grass yet to come this month. And so Laverne Johnson will be closed again August 11th through the 15th. So busy month here in Lyons. I also want to let folks know that we have posted our surplus items, materials, and vehicles, and that is now going to be available for a closed bid if people are interested in getting in on that. There's lots of desks and computers, and there's a couple of vehicles and just surplus items that the board declared last month that will now be going to closed bids. So that's my report for now. Any questions?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on something that Administrator Simonson just said, and then it's a callback to Mayor Rogan. I have gotten a lot of really positive feedback from various residents around the community multiple times saying how great the CMEX referral was that we did. And so I just really, we have to celebrate our wins, and, you know, hopefully we will come out of this victoriously. But nonetheless, I think the feedback in general is that the public is very pleased with the work. And so congratulations, everyone. It feels really good to get that positive input. But I also wanted to follow up. Is there a way that we can a little bit more publicly promote the next public hearings? I know Mayor Rogan mentioned the 17th is with the Planning Commission, but I think residents are still asking and not clear about what the next process is, even though I know we have promoted it and the paper was written about, etc. So I just was wondering if we could put out another element of a blast saying specifically that the community is able to publicly participate in the Boulder County's Planning Commission to yeah, you know what I'm trying to say, CMEX.
Yeah. Administrator Simonson.
I had one other item I had forgotten, and it came into your packet late. I did give you an overview of the code compliance. He did his first kind of overview of things he's been working on since he started. And I do want to mention that as part of our fire mitigation strategies, as many of you know, we have several areas of very tall dead grasses around town and in town. So we are going to be trying a new methodology for lions, but I think it's awesome. We are going to have we're going to give a try to letting goats eat the dry grasses. And so there's going to be two separate herds of goats coming to Lyons. One will be coming to the Stacy parcel, which is a large 6-acre parcel down in the confluence. They feel it's more efficient and more organic than bringing in other types of equipment to mow that down. And then there's an area up between, for lack of a better term, it's on Steamboat Valley, but near the playground off of Horizon. that is quite hilly and actually quite ideal for goats to do their job. And they not only do the fire mitigation, they also eat the noxious weeds. So we're going to give it a try and see if that can address some of the areas that are more difficult to mitigate with equipment. So if you see goats, it is part of a town-sponsored fire mitigation method.
I could not be more thrilled about this. I brought this up to the last board and everybody pretty much shrugged, but it's a proven way. And wow, we can get a lot. I think we can get some good press out of this too. So I think it's great. And hopefully the kids can pet the goats if they want to pet the goats. And I echo Mayor Pro Tem's comments about making it really explicit what the next steps on CMEX are. I think we just today got the agenda for that planning commission meeting, and there are 4 items on it, and we are the last item. The good news is the meeting starts at 1:30 in the afternoon and not 7 o'clock at night. So definitely we'll be wanting to get the word out on that. Trustee Edding, yeah, you have a comment?
Yeah, just real quick. I just want to echo. I had several people approach me and tell me how grateful they were and how well written they thought our referral was. So that was fantastic. I received nothing but good positive feedback at the town park, listening to music, etc. My also understanding is the goat person will be camping up on Steamboat Valley Road too. Is that true? And so we're all going to bring them food. So
yeah,
keep the goat person alive, right?
There's the 2 different companies handle it differently. One has a small herd of goats that only eats about an acre of grass in a week. And one brings like 35 goats and they eat an acre a day. And so with one of the groups, they have a shepherd overnight with them, and the other one, they literally corral them and put them in a shelter overnight. So they know we're prime. We have lots of animals that would probably enjoy meeting them at night. So we're going to prevent that from happening.
Thanks. Can you alert us as to when the goats will be arriving? Can you alert the board? Great.
Love it.
Okay. Legal update. Brandon, you're going to have to top the goats. I'm sorry.
Well, I got nothing better than goats. I mean, I don't have any updates in the litigation front. The Honeywell and Yoder cases, pretty much same old. Just document production right now in the Honeywell case. I did want to mention briefly about the gun violence prevention packet of documents. So those are all done at this point. We were planning on having on this agenda, but I neglected to remember that whenever we do a text amendment to the zoning code, it needs to go to PCDC first. And so that will be going to PCDC first, the zoning piece of this. And then once that is done, we thought it was a better idea that these to come forward to the board as a package. And so they'll all be coming forward on the 15th. There'll be 4 separate documents. So this little update on why that was moved to the next agenda. But other than that, that's all I had. Anyone have any questions?
Trustee Williams, did you have a comment about something?
No, I was just going to say that I'm pretty sure I've been on a lot of boards in my life, and I'm fairly sure this is the first time I've ever been on a board where the words were spoken, "Please tell us when the goats arrive."
Well, we have to keep our focus on what's really important. Okay, any questions for Attorney Dittman? No, great. Can we please have a summary of action items?
Yes, ma'am. I've got ordinance 1125 is to go to the second reading. I believe Mayor Pro Tem Farrell requested that we research marijuana rates and fees collected from the city of Longmont. We're to draft a potential ballot question on lodging tax to be percentage based with a rate at 8% with flexibility and allocation of funds. Also draft a ballot question on subdividing and rezoning a small portion of Sandstone Park to include maps. An e-blast to go out on CMEX Boulder County hearings for public input and alert the board when the goats arrive.
Administrator Simonson.
And to talk with Planet Bluegrass regarding potential lodging and camping and how that could work for them.
And Riverbend, right?
And Riverbend.
Yeah.
I can do both.
Okay. Attorney Dittman?
Dolores, did you get the piece about the fees on the 436 Main Street?
I did not.
Okay, I didn't think so. I didn't think I heard.
They want a breakdown of how much we've spent on fees for those core requests.
Yeah, well, not just core. I think it's for everything, right? It was my
Right,
understanding for 436, 432 Main Street, which would be
Gotcha.
a lot of different people.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to move into executive session? Mayor Pro Tem.
I move that we move into executive session pursuant to CRS section 24-6-4024A for the purpose of the discussion of the sale of town-owned property at the former water treatment plant facility site located at 2157 Apple Valley Road and North St. Vrain Drive, Mountains, Colorado. Mountains?
It's a weird address, but that's what it shows up on the assessor site. So
Okay, 80540.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, 2 seconds. Any discussion? No. Vote to approve going into executive session?
Passes unanimously. And I will email you the link right now.
Thank you.